Chapter 496. Dong Da's, Chowning Fu's, and Lu Ji's faces darkened at this point. At the very least, they were reputable people in the great Han Empire. But now, they were being pointed at by a group of soldiers who were filled with killing intent. How could they possibly feel good? At Dong Da's army, Dong Da's son-in-law, Niu Fu, saw that Dong Da had a weapon pointed at him as soon as he arrived in front of the Samsara Corps. Kill them! Save the general! Wait! Hua Xiong's face changed and he hurriedly shouted. Hua Xiong, are you betraying the general? Are you going to side with Yi Chen? Niu Fu shouted sternly as he glared at Hua Xiong. Bullshit! I've always followed the general, how can I betray him? Niu Fu, don't think you can do whatever you want just because you're the general's son-in-law. Hua Xiong shouted angrily. Niu Fu's face turned ferocious when he heard this. He pointed his spear at Hua Xiong and shouted, Me? Do whatever I want? Hua Xiong, open your dog eyes and see, the general is about to be killed. At this moment, a middle-aged man with a goatee suddenly sighed, then he looked at Niu Fu and said, Don't worry. General Niu, the Lord and General of Agile Cavalry Yi Chen, are both subordinates. He won't dare to do anything to the Lord, please don't be angry. Niu Fu was stunned and his face darkened. After a moment of silence, Niu Fu looked at the middle-aged man and said, Li Ru, I hope you're right. Otherwise, I won't forgive you if the general is hurt. When Li Ru heard this, he smiled and said, If the Lord is harmed in the slightest, I am willing to stretch out my neck and die. At Chowning Fu's army, Xiahou Yuan and Xiahou Dun's faces changed when they saw what happened to Chowning Fu, but neither of them gave the order to save Chowning Fu. At Lu Ji's army, when Lu Ji's deputy general saw the Samsara Corps pointing their guns at Lu Ji, Chowning Fu, and Dong Da, his lips twitched. He then looked at Lu Ji's subordinate. Don't act rashly. At the location of the Samsara army, Dong Da, Chowning Fu, and Lu Ji did not dismount, nor did they hand over their weapons. Because this was a matter of face, Yi Chen was not the emperor, and they were not Yi Chen's subordinates. This was not a military camp, so there was no reason for them to dismount and hand over their weapons. Moreover, they were all military officials of the great Han Empire. Although their positions were not as high as Yi Chen's, they still couldn't meet Yi Chen as if he were the emperor. In their opinion, this should be the spontaneous action of the Samsara Legion. This was because the soldiers of the Samsara Legion were all at the Xiantian realm, and they were all trained by Yi Chen. They would definitely support Yi Chen and follow Yi Chen wholeheartedly. They would not let anyone who could harm Yi Chen get close to them. Therefore, the Samsara Legion's soldiers asked them to dismount and hand over their weapons. However, Yi Chen was the great general of the great Han Empire's light cavalry. He should know this basic etiquette and would quickly stop the Samsara Legion's soldiers. However, they thought too much. They waited and waited, but Yi Chen did not stop the Samsara Legion's soldiers. Dong Da, Chowning Fu, and Lu Ji's expressions suddenly turned ugly. Just as the anger on their faces reached its peak, Chowning Fu's expression suddenly returned to normal. He then calmly dismounted from his horse, unsheathed the long sword at his waist, and handed it to the Samsara Legion's soldiers. After the Samsara Legion's soldiers took Chowning Fu's sword, Chowning Fu looked at Dong Da and Lu Ji and bowed calmly. Generals, the great general of the light cavalry has strict military discipline. It's better for us to walk over. When Dong Da and Lu Ji heard this, their faces instantly darkened. At this moment, the Samsara Legion's messenger suddenly rode over and shouted at the Samsara Legion's soldiers. The Lord has ordered you to put down your weapons and let the 3 generals pass. The 3 generals are not those disguised assassins. When Dong Da and Lu Ji heard this, they were both stunned. Then, they revealed expressions of realization. Swoosh! The soldiers of the Samsara Corps put away their weapons in unison and opened up a path for him. Fu, who had just calmly explained to Yi Chen, suddenly had a wonderful expression on his face. This was because his words sounded like he was explaining to Yi Chen, but in reality, he was trying to drive a wedge between them. After all, he, Dongda, and Lu Ji were all respectable military officers. When they saw that Yi Chen did not even need to dismount from his horse and had even unsheathed his sword, they felt that it was inappropriate. If they were in the main tent, it would be fine. However, this wasn't the main tent of the military camp. There was no need to do this. However, Fu's motive was obvious. He wanted to drive a wedge between Dongda and Lu Ji so that they would hate Yi Chen. As for his motive, it was very simple. Yi Chen was too strong. 510,000 cavalrymen was a force that could not be ignored. In addition, they were all in the Xiantian realm. They would be invincible in a battle outside the city. No one could stop them. Therefore, Fu wanted to set a trap for Yi Chen. He wanted Lu Ji, especially Dongda, to hate Yi Chen from the bottom of their hearts. This way, Yi Chen would have one or two more enemies. This was undoubtedly what Fu, who wanted to dominate the world, wanted to see the most. Dongda and Lu Ji looked at each other. Then, they both dismounted from their horses and handed their swords to the Samsara Legion's soldiers. After the Samsara Legion's soldiers received their swords, Dongda and Lu Ji followed the path that the Samsara Legion made and walked forward. When they passed by Fu, who had already returned to normal, Dongda nodded with a smile. However, Lu Ji frowned. When Fu saw this, he hurriedly bowed apologetically. Then, he followed Dongda and Lu Ji towards Yi Chen. Dongda and Lu Ji naturally did not think that Fu was trying to drive a wedge between them. After all, Fu looked like a peacemaker at that time. To be more precise, Fu was trying to give them a way out. However, while Dongda liked this, Lu Ji did not. This was because Fu's actions just now were no different from lowering his status. Naturally, Fu's superior, Lu Ji, did not like this. From Lu Ji's point of view, it was impossible for the great general of the Great Han Empire's swift cavalry not to know that it was rude to ask them to dismount and unload their weapons. It was also impossible for him to not give an explanation. It was even more impossible for him to allow the Samsara Legion's soldiers to be rude to them. After all, Yi Chen's reputation in the outside world was not that of a brute. Instead, he was the god of war of the Great Han Empire. He loved his people and his soldiers like his children. How could such a person not have manners? Of course, there was a delay in the middle. Lu Ji was angry because of this, but he still did not dismount. He wanted to continue waiting, but Fu suddenly dismounted and gave them a way out. If this was not lowering his status, what was it? And now, the Samsara Legion's messenger came to explain. This clearly confirmed Lu Ji's speculation. Yi Chen did not expect his soldiers to treat the three of them like this. Of course, Lu Ji could also understand the Samsara Legion's actions. After all, Yi Chen had encountered an assassin in disguise. It would be strange if the Samsara Legion soldiers just let the three of them pass. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Lu Ji had a grudge against Fu. At the back of the Samsara Legion, Yi Chen, who was riding on Little Gold, looked at Dongda, Fu, and Lu Ji who were walking towards him. He could not help but raise his eyebrows. Fu was indeed Fu. His ability to trick people was not bad. Chapter 497. Yi Chen had been releasing his divine sense. Dongda, Fu, and Lu Ji's every move, every word, and every expression were all clearly seen by Yi Chen. Therefore, Fu's trick of sowing discord could not escape Yi Chen's perception at all. Of course, Yi Chen also clearly saw Fu's brilliant expression when he failed to sow discord. However, this was not important. What was important was that Fu, who had not yet made a fortune, was disliked by Lu Ji. This was undoubtedly something Fu did not want to see. After all, Chowning Fu was currently under Lu Ji's management. However, this was something that Yi Chen was happy about. After all, Chowning Fu would soon become one of the 18 feudal lords and would definitely fight with Yi Chen. Of course, Yi Chen did not care about Chowning Fu's future achievements at this moment because Chowning Fu was not on the same level as Yi Chen at all. Before Yi Chen's rise, he would still regard Chowning Fu as someone important. However, at this moment, Yi Chen did not care about any ambitious person in this world. This was also an unexpected gain. He originally wanted to show Dong his power, but he did not expect Chowning Fu to be willing to jump in himself. Thinking of this, Yi Chen glanced at Chowning Fu, who was walking over with a calm face. The corners of his mouth curled up, and then he regained his composure. Not long after, Dong De, Lu Ji, and Chowning Fu arrived in front of Yi Chen. The three of them glanced at Yi Chen, then bowed in unison. "Greetings, General of Agile Cavalry." Yi Chen's official position was higher than the three of them. Even his title was higher than theirs. The three of them naturally didn't dare to act casually in front of Yi Chen. Not only could they not act casually, they also had to properly salute him. Otherwise, if news of this spread out, the three of them would definitely be criticized and even cursed by the people of the world. Yi Chen nodded, then looked at the three of them and asked, "Why are you here? Why have you all come here?" Reporting to General Liao Qi, "I heard that General Liao Qi is attacking Jilu, so I came here to help." When Lu Ji heard this, he hurriedly bowed. When Dong De heard this, he immediately smiled at Yi Chen, bowed and said, "Brother Yi, I'm sorry." This lowly official feels the same way. However, this lowly official did not expect the General of Agile Cavalry to be such a godly commander. Now that he has broken through Jilu and killed Zhang Ju, Zhang Bao, and Zhang Liang, when His Majesty learns of this, he will definitely be overjoyed. The people of the world will definitely praise the General of Agile Cavalry's peerless achievements. When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled and said, "That's right. General Dong's words are too serious. This Yi is just doing what a subject should do. How can there be such a thing as unparalleled merit?" Furthermore, General Lu and General Dong contributed greatly to the attack on Jilu. Rest assured, I will report this to His Majesty. Dong De and Lu Ji were startled after hearing this. They never thought that Yi Chen would say this. This was clearly telling them that they had a share of the battle credit for breaking through Jilu. After regaining his senses, Dong De looked at Yi Chen with shining eyes. Lu Ji, on the other hand, frowned slightly and looked at Yi Chen. "General Liao Qi, this..." "Ha ha ha, General Lu, you don't have to be humble. Without your suppression, Zhang Ju would have escaped to other places. Even if the army of Samsara City is good at fighting, how can we catch all of them in one fell swoop?" Yi Chen laughed and said, This. Lu Ji's face turned red when he heard this. Yi Chen made it sound good, but the truth was that he could not suppress Zhang Ju at all. Not only could he not suppress Zhang Ju, but he also had to be on guard because Zhang Ju was too perverse. If not for the fact that Zhang Ju did not want to suffer heavy losses, Lu Ji's army would have been defeated by Zhang Ju. Lu Ji knew this very well. It was precisely because he knew this that he was embarrassed. However, in front of Yi Chen, Lu Ji was too embarrassed to admit that he could not. If he said this, it would be too embarrassing. It's settled then, but... Yi Chen glanced at Lu Ji, who wanted to ask for the contribution points but was embarrassed to do so. Before Yi Chen could finish, anyone could tell that Yi Chen was in trouble. When Dong De heard this, he hurriedly looked at Yi Chen and bowed. "General Liao Qi, if you have any difficulties, please feel free to tell me. I will do my best to help General Liao Qi." Clearly, Dong De wanted to curry favor with Yi Chen and curry favor with Yi Chen. As for the reason, it was simple. Yi Chen wanted to share the credit for defeating Jilu. Dong De did not want to miss such a good opportunity. After all, Yi Chen's words sounded like he was in trouble. If he did not use this opportunity to curry favor with Yi Chen, he would be a fool. One had to know that conquering Jilu was a great achievement. Just a small portion of it would be enough to gain a lot of benefits from Luhong. Of course, money was out of the question. However, Dongda did not care about money. Furthermore, he did not lack it. What he lacked was an official position. That was why he could not wait to help Yi Chen. Yi Chen could not help but sigh after hearing Dongda's words. He then looked at Dongda and said, "Although Jinjin has been destroyed, there are still countless demons wreaking havoc in the Great Han Dynasty. The Great Han Dynasty will not be at peace until the demons are completely destroyed. However, our Samsara City army has rushed here from Yuzhou. Our men and horses have not stopped for rest. We are already exhausted. If we want to destroy the demons and restore peace to the Great Han Dynasty, we will not be able to do so." As soon as Yi Chen said this, Chao Ningfu, who had followed Dongda and Lu Ji here, frowned. However, he quickly regained his composure. When Dongda heard Yi Chen's words, he was first stunned. Then, he shuddered. Dongda knew what kind of existence the demons were. Not only did he know, but he had also fought with them. Naturally, he knew how cruel they were. Now, Yi Chen's words sounded like they could not continue attacking the demons and the Samsara City army needed to rest. Dongda did not dare to continue. If he did, Yi Chen would ask him to lead his army to attack the demons. The consequences would be dire. His army would not be left with many soldiers. They might even be completely wiped out. General of Agile Cavalry, although the demons are very powerful, we must eliminate them. Otherwise, the world will no longer be dominated by the human tribe. Lu Ji's face suddenly changed when he heard this. He hurriedly bowed and said. Lu Ji naturally knew how powerful the demons were. However, at this moment, Yi Chen's Samsara Legion was the most likely to destroy the demons. After all, the soldiers of the Samsara Legion were all in the primordial realm and were equipped with luxurious equipment. If Yi Chen did not send troops, it would be really bad. Hearing this, Yi Chen sighed again and said, "Actually, I want to send troops quickly. Actually, I also want to send out my troops as soon as possible. However, the horses are too tired. I'm afraid that they won't be able to move forward after a short distance. As you can see, the army of Samsara City is all cavalry. Although the soldiers are in the innate realm and can recover quickly, the horses can't." As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Dongda's eyes lit up. He looked at Yi Chen and bowed. "Zhua, I'm willing to contribute 1,000,000 war horses to the general of Agile Cavalry." Chapter 498. Dongda said that he would contribute 1,000,000 war horses to Yi Chen. Other than wanting to get more credit, he also had the intention of not participating in the attack on the demon army. Yi Chen could naturally see this point. After all, Dongda could only get war horses from his cavalry. Otherwise, Dongda would have nowhere to get war horses for Yi Chen. Once Dongda gave the war horses of his cavalry to Yi Chen, his cavalry would definitely become infantry. Needless to say, the marching speed of his cavalry would definitely be slower than that of cavalry. In this way, Dongda could leisurely attack the demons and would not have to fight them head-on. Yi Chen could see all of this, but he did not care at all. Furthermore, this was also the result that Yi Chen wanted to see. If Dongda participated in the attack on the demons, Yi Chen would not want to see that. This was because Yi Chen would definitely use the White Tiger Battle Formation and the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation. Once Yi Chen used the White Tiger Battle Formation and the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation, Dongda would definitely be frightened. Scaring Dongda and showing him who was the boss did not mean that Dongda would be afraid or even despair. After all, the power of the White Tiger Battle Formation and the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation had already reached the peak with the support of 510,000 Samsara Legion soldiers. Yi Chen could not determine how powerful they were exactly. This was because ever since the Samsara Legion had reached the Xiantian realm, Yi Chen had not used the White Tiger Battle Formation or the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation. However, this was not important. What was important was that Dong De and the other officials of the Great Han Empire would definitely be frightened when they saw Yi Chen using the White Tiger Battle Formation or the Vermilion Bird Battle Formation. There was no doubt about this. Yi Chen did not want to see such a situation happen. Otherwise, the Great Han Empire would definitely be in a situation where no one dared to rebel or act recklessly because of Yi Chen's existence. Yi Chen wanted to wait for the world to descend into chaos and the start of the struggle for hegemony. Then, he would sweep through the world and ascend to the throne. Boss Dong is indeed treacherous. However, this is exactly what I want. Thinking of this, Yi Chen was overjoyed. Then, he looked at Dong De and asked, "Really? Everything this lowly official said is true?" When Dong De heard this, he bowed without hesitation. "In that case, I am also willing to contribute 100,000 warhorses to General Liao Qi." Lu Ji gritted his teeth and bowed. Chao Ningfu hesitated for a moment before bowing to Yi Chen. F***CK, I'm also willing to contribute 10,000 warhorses to the General of Agile Cavalry. Good. Good. Ha ha, if we can exterminate the demonic beasts, I will definitely ask His Majesty for a reward on behalf of General Dong, General Liu, and General Chao. When Yi Chen heard this, he threw his head back and howled with laughter. Dong De was overjoyed when he heard this. Yi Chen's words were very clear. If the Yao clan was exterminated, he would definitely have a share of the credit. Moreover, his contribution would definitely be much greater than Lu Ji's, because he contributed 1,000,000 warhorses to Yi Chen. Lu Ji, on the other hand, smiled awkwardly and bowed to Yi Chen. Obviously, Lu Ji was still a little embarrassed. Chao Ningfu, on the other hand, smiled and bowed to Yi Chen as well. Yi Chen glanced at Dong De, Chao Ningfu, and Lu Ji, then frowned. When the excited Dong De saw this, he could not help but be stunned. Then, his eyes lit up. Without thinking, he directly opened his mouth and asked. Without thinking, he asked directly, "General Liao Qi, do you have any problems?" At this moment, Dong De was very happy that Yi Chen had problems. The more problems Yi Chen had, the more help he could provide. Then, he could get more military merits from Yi Chen. After hearing Dong Da's question, Yi Chen let out a long sigh and said, "Indeed, the Yao clan is too brutal and powerful. Every time we fight with the Yao clan, many warhorses will be lost." Dong De was stunned when he heard this. Then, without thinking, he said directly, "Don't worry, General of Agile Cavalry. Joie. I'm willing to contribute another 1,000,000 warhorses to the General of Agile Cavalry." As soon as Dong De said this, he suddenly thought of something. His eyes flashed, and then he hurriedly continued, "No. Joie. I'm willing to provide 3,000,000 warhorses to the General of Agile Cavalry. But now, I can only provide 2,000,000 warhorses to the General of Agile Cavalry. I'll send someone back to Liangzhou to prepare the other 1,000,000 warhorses and send them to Samsara City." As soon as Dong De finished his words, Lu Ji could not help but be stunned. Lu Ji did not expect Dong De to be able to get so many warhorses. But immediately Lu Ji frowned. Obviously, Lu Ji saw through Dong Da's plan. To be precise, Lu Ji saw through Dong Da's unwillingness to lead the army to attack the Yao clan. Chao Ningfu, who was next to Lu Ji, suddenly thought of something. He could not help but glance at Dong De, and then he stood aside and said nothing. Yi Chen looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. Then, he looked at Dong De and shouted, "Ha ha ha, good. With General Dong's help, the army of Samsara City will definitely be able to attack the Yao clan with all our strength. If we win, General Dong will be the first to take credit." "How dare I take credit for it?" Dong De hurriedly bowed and said. Yi Chen glanced at Dong De and then shouted in a deep voice, "If you say it's the first to take credit, it will be the first to take credit. If I say you're the chief merit, then you're the chief merit. If anyone dares to speak nonsense, they'll have to ask this Yi for permission first." Guo Yi and Tianfeng, who were behind Yi Chen, exchanged glances. Then, they hurriedly dismounted from their horses and bowed to Yi Chen, saying loudly, "My lord, you can't." Although the soldiers of Samsara City have all reached the Khanate realm, there are hundreds of millions of Yao clan monsters. With such a small force, we will not be able to defeat the Yao clan's army. Please reconsider, my lord. How dare you? How can the Crooked Demon tribe stop the army of Samsara City? Even if the Crooked Demon tribe is 10 times or 100 times stronger, what is there to be afraid of? Yi Chen was furious when he heard this. My lord. Guo Yi and Tianfeng were anxious when they heard this. They bowed again and advised him. When Yi Chen heard this, his eyes suddenly widened. He looked at Guo Yi and Tianfeng and shouted angrily, "Don't waste your breath. I can flatten Yubing City in 2 hours, destroy Wuhuan in 1 day, and destroy Jinjin in 3 days. No matter how strong the Yao clan is, they will not be able to stop the army of Samsara City. General of Agile Cavalry, I am willing to follow you to attack the Yao clan." Lu Ji hurriedly bowed and said, "F***CK, I am also willing." Chao Ningfu hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Dongda glanced at Lu Ji and Chao Ningfu, then hurriedly looked at Yi Chen and bowed. "Zhua, I am also willing." Yi Chen was slightly stunned when he heard this. He then looked at Dongda, Chao Ningfu, and Lu Ji and sighed. "None of your soldiers have reached the Khanate realm. Not only will it be useless, but it will also increase the strength of the Yao clan." Before Yi Chen could finish, Lu Ji hurriedly bowed and said again, "General of Agile Cavalry." Lu Ji naturally wanted to persuade Yi Chen, but he was interrupted by Yi Chen before he could finish. The Yao clan is cruel by nature and they love to eat humans. The more humans they eat, the stronger they become. General Lu, don't create obstacles for the army of Samsara City. Yi Chen met Lu Ji, Chao Ningfu, and Dongda here. Logically speaking, he should join them to attack the Yao clan. However, this was not in Yi Chen's interest at all. Therefore, Yi Chen could not agree to Lu Ji's request at all. Lu Ji's face suddenly changed when he heard this. However, when he saw the 510,000 soldiers of the Samsara Legion who had reached the Khanate realm, he could not help but sigh. Then, he looked at Yi Chen and bowed. "Yes, General of Agile Cavalry. General Liao Qi is worthy of being called the war god of the great Han dynasty. I, Zhuo Qi, am willing to contribute 10 chests of jewels, 10 chests of gold, and 1 chest of purple coins to General Liao Qi to reward these 510,000 warriors." Dongda sighed when he saw this. "Thank you, General Dong." Yi Chen could not help but raise his eyebrows when he heard this. When Dongda heard this, he once again let out a heavy sigh. He then bowed and said, "I'm ashamed. If my soldiers were all at the Khanate realm, General of Agile Cavalry would not have to fight alone." Alas, Dongda took a deep breath and exhaled. Then, he looked at Yi Chen and said loudly, "Zhua, go back and prepare the horses." "Zhua, I'll go back and prepare the horses. Please wait for a moment, General of Agile Cavalry." "All right." Yi Chen chuckled and nodded when he heard this. "Ji, go back and prepare the horses too." Lu Ji sighed and then looked at Yi Chen and bowed. F***CK, go and prepare the horses too." Yi Chen nodded his head after hearing this. Dongda, Lu Ji, and Chao Ningfu bowed to Yi Chen again, and then went back to their army. Chapter 499. After Dongda, Lu Ji, and Chao Ningfu left, Guo Yi and Tianfeng looked at each other and smiled. Then, they turned to Yi Chen and bowed. "Congratulations, my lord. Congratulations, my lord. The Samsara City army is about to conquer the world." When Yi Chen heard this, he laughed out loud and said, "Your acting is not bad. Once the war horses arrive, we will set off and wipe out all the demons in the world." "Yes, my lord. My lord." Guo Yi and Tianfeng smiled at Huang Xiaolong's words and bowed respectfully. Yi Chen had been acting from the beginning. He had deceived Dongda, Lu Ji, and Chowning Fu into thinking that Yi Chen was arrogant, supercilious, or even a lunatic. In the end, Dongda, Chowning Fu, and Lu Ji all believed him. After all, the 510,000 soldiers of the Samsara Legion clashing head-on with the Devil Race Army and not allowing anyone to interfere was something only a madman would do. Of course, this was in line with Dongda and Chowning Fu's thoughts. They did not like to fight the demon race head-on. Such an action was akin to courting death. Unless they relied on their cities to fight the demon race, they might be able to put up a fight. Otherwise, no matter how many soldiers they sent, they would all be wiped out by the demon race. It was because of this that Dongda and Chowning Fu offered Yi Chen warhorses when Yi Chen said that he was short of warhorses. In this way, their soldiers would turn from cavalry to infantry. Even if they followed Yi Chen to attack the demon race, they would be able to escape after Yi Chen's Samsara City army was wiped out by the demon race. As for their purpose, naturally, it was to preserve their strength. In fact, Dongda wanted to provide Yi Chen with all the warhorses, but he did not want to be too obvious about it. Later, Yi Chen said that there were not enough warhorses, so Dongda offered all the warhorses of his 2 million cavalry soldiers without hesitation. In the end, he also provided Yi Chen with an additional 1 million warhorses. Dongda's purpose was simple. If Yi Chen failed and died in battle, then the additional 1 million warhorses would not be given to him. If Yi Chen really won, then he wouldn't hesitate to provide horses for Yi Chen so that Yi Chen could continue to build a cavalry army. Dongda would only be at ease if Yi Chen's troops were all cavalry. After all, a cavalry army would not be able to attack a city. As for Lu Ji, he wasn't as ruthless as Dongda and Chowning Fu, but there was no doubt that he was a little selfish. Of course, none of this was important. What was important was that Yi Chen had achieved his goal. He had tricked Dongda, Lu Ji, and Chowning Fu and obtained 11 million warhorses. Although Dongda needed to transport 1 million war horses from Liang Continent to Reincarnation Immortal City, this didn't hinder Yi Chen's plan. As time passed, Dongda, Lu Ji, and Chowning Fu each sent their men to transport the warhorses to the Samsara Legion. When all 11 million warhorses were delivered, Yi Chen looked at the hidden infantrymen of Reincarnation City and shouted, "Each of you pick a warhorse." No need to respond. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, the infantrymen of Reincarnation City were all stunned. They didn't know that they had been hidden by Yi Chen. After coming to their senses, the infantrymen of Reincarnation City bowed to Yi Chen and then ran to the warhorses. Each of them chose a warhorse and got on it. When all the soldiers got on their warhorses, Yi Chen glanced at Lu Ji, Chowning Fu, and Dongda, who were watching from afar. He nodded with a smile and then shouted, "Let's go to Luoyang." At this moment, the demons who had invaded the human world had begun to gather in Luoyang. It wouldn't take long for countless demons to gather in Luoyang. Yi Chen naturally wouldn't waste his time and go to other places to eliminate the demons. Moreover, Yi Chen couldn't waste his time casually either. After all, Yi Chen had already killed 2 of the 3 hidden big bosses of the human race in the beginner's area of the 3 kingdoms, Yu Ji, Zhuaxi, and Nan Hua. The last one, Nan Hua Immortal, had already lived in seclusion in the Reincarnation Immortal City. Even if Nan Hua Immortal attacked when the demons attacked Luoyang, he alone couldn't withstand the attack of hundreds of millions of demons. If Yi Chen went to other places to eliminate the demons at this time and didn't hurry to Luoyang, Luoyang would definitely be conquered by the demons. At that time, the emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, Lu Hong, would lose his life. Of course, Yi Chen didn't care whether Lu Hong lived or died. However, Lu Hong couldn't die at this time. Otherwise, the fate of the human race would be taken away by the demons. This was not the result Yi Chen wanted to see. Therefore, Yi Chen had to go to Luoyang as soon as possible. "Yes, my lord!" Loud shouts rang out in an instant. In the next second, Yi Chen turned his horse around and rode toward Luoyang. The Samsara Legion followed closely behind, followed by the 1.9 million hidden cavalry of the Reincarnation City. Of course, only Yi Chen and the 510,000 Samsara Legion soldiers and 2,110,000 warhorses could be seen. Soon, the earth rumbled. Rumble, rumble, Chao Ningfu, Dongda, and Lu Ji saw this and bowed to Yi Chen, who was leaving. Congratulations to the General of Agile Cavalry for your victory and killing all the demons. Although their voices were loud, they were instantly drowned out by the rumbling of the earth. Rumble, thousands of horses galloped and the earth rumbled. Yi Chen left with the army of the Reincarnation City. He was getting faster and soon disappeared from the sight of Chao Ningfu, Dong De, and Lu Ji. Where Dong Da's army was. Li Ru, what do you think are the odds of the General of Agile Cavalry winning? Dong De glanced at the dust that was splashed up by the galloping war horses, then looked at Li Ru beside him and asked. When Li Ru heard this, he smiled slightly and then bowed. My lord, I think the General of Agile Cavalry will lose this time. Why do you say that? Dong De raised his eyebrows and asked when he heard this. Li Ru glanced at the dust that was splashed up by the galloping war horses in the distance and then said with a smile, My lord, since the General of Agile Cavalry became the lord, he has always been winning battles with fewer people. This has already aroused his pride. Otherwise, he would not have made the magnificent feat of confronting the demons with 510,000 soldiers. Unfortunately, the General of Agile Cavalry came from Yuzhou and did not know that the demons were gathering in Luoyang. If the General of Agile Cavalry only encountered hundreds of thousands or even millions of demons, he might win. But the closer he was to Luoyang, the greater the number of demons. Once he arrived at Luoyang, he would encounter at least 100 million demons. Such a large number of demons could not be easily dealt with. Even if the General of Agile Cavalry's cavalrymen were in the innate realm, they could not directly confront the hundreds of millions of demons. Therefore, the General of Agile Cavalry will definitely lose. Alas, it's a pity that the peerless army god, who is rarely seen in hundreds of years, will die in the hands of the demons. Dong Da's eyes suddenly flashed, and then he sighed deeply. Chapter 500. My lord, General of Agile Cavalry Yi Chen is a valiant man. Even if he is defeated, he can still rise again. My lord, you mustn't let your guard down. Li Ru smiled and bowed after hearing Dong Da's words. Dong Da laughed and said, A valiant man can be resurrected. However, even if he is resurrected, he won't be able to keep his position. What's there to be afraid of? My lord, you're right. Li Ru nodded with a smile and said. Dong Da laughed wildly again. After a while, Dong Da's face turned serious. He looked at Niu Fu and said in a deep voice, Niu Fu, lead the troops back to Liangzhou and recruit soldiers with all your might. Select the soldiers with grades A and B. Also, capture blacksmiths for me. Don't let any of them go, no matter if they are beginner, advanced, or master blacksmiths. When we have enough blacksmiths, give these blueprints to the blacksmiths and let them forge for me. There's no limit to the number of blacksmiths. At this point, Dongda took out 3 pieces of blueprints and handed them to Niu Fu, who was still in a daze. When Niu Fu saw this, he hurriedly took it and bowed. Yes, my lord. Li Ru glanced at the blueprints in Niu Fu's hand, then looked at Dongda and bowed. My lord is wise. Ha ha ha, so what if it's a diamond armor set? Every Liangzhou cavalry will have a mystery armor set. When the time comes, we'll show the world how valiant our Xiliang cavalry is. Dongda laughed and shouted. Where Chao Ningfu's army was. What a pity! Chao Ningfu looked in the direction of the Samsara City army and sighed. Xiahou Dun and Xiahou Yuan looked at each other and said in unison, My lord, this is God's will. Chao Ningfu was slightly stunned when he heard this. Then, his eyes lit up. A few seconds later, Chao Ningfu let out a long sigh and looked at Xiahou Dun. Yuanrang, return to Qiao County and recruit soldiers with all your might. You must gather 1,000,000 grades A and B, yes, my lord. Xiahou Dun was stunned when he heard this. When he came to his senses, he hurriedly bowed. Chowning Fu glanced at Dong Da's army in the distance, then took out a few blueprints and handed them to Xiahou Dun. When Xiahou Dun saw this, he hurriedly received it with both hands. This is another mission. Do your best to gather blacksmith. No matter what method you use, you must get enough blacksmith. Then, give this blueprint to the blacksmiths and have them forge it with all their might. Do not slack off. Yes, my lord. After Xiahou Dun received the map, he glanced at it and was stunned. After he recovered from his shock, he hurriedly bowed and greeted. The location of Lu Ji's army. General of Agile Cavalry, alas. Lu Ji looked in the direction of the army of Samsara City and heaved a long sigh. Rumble, 10,000 horses galloped and the earth rumbled. In front of the army of Samsara City. Yi Chen's consciousness moved and instantly covered a radius of 10,000 miles. After that, he locked onto the reincarnation immortal city that was flying in the sky. Yi Chen's voice suddenly rang out in the hall of reincarnation immortal city's lost manor. Zizhong, there are tens of millions of golden scarf surrendered soldiers marching towards Yuzhou. When they arrive at Yuzhou, they will cultivate the wasteland. Later, you will distribute enough food, seeds, and farming tools to them. Yi Chen had taken in tens of millions of golden scarf surrendered soldiers and had ordered them to go to Yuzhou. Naturally, he would not leave them alone. Mi Zhu, who was dealing with the affairs of Samsara Immortal City, was stunned when he heard this. Then, he hurriedly got up and bowed to the sky. Yes, my lord. In addition, I will send a batch of war horses back to Samsara City. Send someone to take care of them. Yi Chen's voice rang out again. Hearing this, Mi Zhu hurriedly bowed again and said, Yes, my lord. 100 miles southwest of Jilu, in front of the army of Samsara City. After delivering the order to Mi Zhu, Yi Chen raised his right hand and shouted, Stop! Hearing this, the army of Samsara City hurriedly stopped and then stopped. When Yi Chen saw this, he sent out his spiritual sense and instantly locked onto the 1,110,000 unrideable warhorses. In the next second, the 11,000,000 war horses disappeared in an instant. Seeing this, the soldiers of Samsara City were stunned. Then, they looked at Yi Chen in unison. In the next second, an extremely strong aura of worship instantly rose up. After feeling the worship from the soldiers, Yi Chen could not help but smile. Then, he shouted, Let's continue. Yes, my lord. The 41,000,000 soldiers of Samsara City shouted in unison. Then, they followed Yi Chen to the southwest. Rumble, tens of thousands of war horses galloped and the earth rumbled. Yi Chen's army of Samsara City charged towards Luoyang with a powerful and domineering aura. Dust billowed everywhere they passed. It was a grand sight. Not long after Yi Chen left, a group of female players on war horses caught up with him. If Yi Chen was here, he would recognize them immediately. They were the female players of Beauty's Alliance who came to Yuzhou to seek help from Yi Chen. Sister Yao Yao, brother Yi Chen is too powerful. He wiped out Jin Jin. If this goes on, there won't be many shifters left. Little lowly Wang Mengmeng said gloomily as she looked into the distance and saw the dust rising from the army of Samsara City. Li Mengyao, the leader of Beauty's Alliance, smiled and said, That won't happen. The shifters aren't that stupid. They will definitely run away when they see that they can't defeat Yi Chen's army. Wang Mengmeng heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. Then, her face fell. She looked at Li Mengyao and asked worriedly, Sister Yao Yao, the barriers of the safe cities in the real world will disappear in less than 3 days. What should we do then? Let's take it one step at a time. If it doesn't work out, we can only rely on the safe cities to defend against the shifters. Li Mengyao said after a moment of silence. Wang Mengmeng clenched her fists and said hatefully, "It's all because of those bad guys. It's all the fault of those bad guys from the Templar. If it weren't for them, we would have already built our own territory in the real world. There's no point in blaming others. We have to rely on ourselves. Only when we are strong can we survive in this world. When that time comes, no one will be able to bully us." Li Mengyao said seriously as she patted Wang Mengmeng's head. Hu Xiaoye, who had been silent all this time, looked worried when she heard this. However, she quickly returned to normal. At this moment, the rumbling of war horses came from behind Beauty's alliance. Hu Xiaoye hurriedly looked at Li Mengyao and said, "Sister Yao Yao, let's hurry up. The people behind us are catching up." "Okay, let's go." Li Mengyao nodded and shouted. Outside Luoyang City, the Shifter's army, which stretched as far as the eye could see, charged again and again at the barrier that enveloped the entire Luoyang City. The soldiers on the city wall shot their arrows again and again at the demon race army outside the city with pale faces. However, the effect was close to zero. Chapter 501. Luoyang Imperial Palace. Clap. Lu Hong slammed his palm against the table in front of him, his face ashen. "Who can tell us? When will the demi-human race be exterminated?" All the officials looked at each other and lowered their heads involuntarily. "Trash. A bunch of trash. What use is there for me to keep all of you?" Lu Hong was enraged when he saw this, and he roared at the court. At this moment, Lu Hong was completely enraged. That was because Luoyang was surrounded by an overwhelming army of demons. Furthermore, they surrounded it so tightly that it was impenetrable. If not for the fact that humanity's karmic luck had suddenly condensed into a massive barrier that protected Luoyang, Luoyang would have been razed to the ground. But the barrier formed by humanity's karmic luck was not invincible. It was constantly weakening, and Lu Hong had no idea how much longer Luoyang could last. Lu Hong did not want to die. He was the emperor, the supreme emperor of the great Han Empire. But now, an intense danger loomed over his head. No matter how Lu Hong thought about it, he could not dispel the fear in his heart. When the officials saw how furious Lu Hong was, they all bowed in shame and said, "Your subjects are incompetent. Your Majesty, please punish us." At this moment, the officials were also helpless. There were simply too many demi-humans outside Luoyang, so many that they couldn't even see the end of the massive walls of Luoyang. When Lu Hong heard this, he became even more enraged. He pointed at the officials with his right hand and harshly roared, all of you, die for us." When the officials heard this, they hastily bowed and said, "This lowly subject is afraid." Standing next to Lu Hong, Grand Eunuch Zhang Li glanced at the enraged Lu Hong, struggled for a moment, and then plopped down on his knees. A second later, Zhang Li loudly bowed. "Your Majesty, this servant recommends a person. He will definitely eradicate the demi-humans outside the city for your Majesty." When Lu Hong heard this, he hastily looked at Zhang Li and asked, "Who?" When Zhang Li heard Lu Hong's question, he hurriedly bowed and said loudly, "Reporting to your Majesty, the person this servant is recommending is the General of Agile Cavalry, Yi Chen." The moment Zhang Li finished speaking, all the civil and military officials were taken aback. In the next second, all of the officials sighed in unison, some even shaking their heads helplessly. Clearly, they didn't believe that Yi Chen could resolve Luoyang's current crisis. After all, there were simply too many demon soldiers outside the city. Furthermore, Yi Chen wasn't near Luoyang, so how could he fight the demons? Lu Hong, who was just about to speak, heard the sighs of the civil and military officials, and his face immediately turned ashen. After trying his best to calm down, Lu Hong looked at Zhang Li and asked in a deep voice, "Father Rang, are you sure that our General of Agile Cavalry, Yi Chen, can resolve Luoyang's crisis?" When Zhang Li heard this, he nodded with certainty and solemnly bowed, "Reporting to your Majesty, This servant is willing to guarantee with my head that the general of Agile Cavalry will definitely eradicate the demi-humans outside the city for your majesty." When Lu Hong heard this, his eyes immediately lit up, and he hurriedly shouted, "Quickly issue a decree. Quick, pass down the order. Let the Agile Cavalry Great General Yi Chen quickly lead the troops here." When a civil official heard this, he couldn't help but sigh and bow. "Your Majesty, Luoyang has already been heavily surrounded by the demon army. The imperial decree can't leave Luoyang at all." When Lu Hong heard this, he was stunned, and then he leaned back on the dragon throne with a bang. This civil official was right. If the imperial decree couldn't even leave Luoyang, how could he issue an imperial decree to Yi Chen? How could he have Yi Chen lead the troops to Luoyang to rescue the emperor? Zhang Li glanced at the civil official, then looked at Lu Hong and bowed again. "Your Majesty, don't worry. Your Majesty, there's no need to worry. The general of Agile Cavalry, Yi Chen, is definitely rushing over at this moment. This servant believes that it won't be long before the general of Agile Cavalry arrives at Luoyang and exterminates the demon army in one fell swoop to avenge your Majesty. Zhang Chongshi, don't be too confident. What if Yi Chen can't come?" General He Jin, who had been silent all this time, coldly snorted and then asked. He Jin originally didn't want to speak at this time. After all, the demi-humans were currently besieging the city, and Lu Hong was furious. If he could not speak, then he wouldn't. This was the best choice. However, Zhang Li kept mentioning Yi Chen again and again, even praising Yi Chen as if he was unparalleled in the heavens. How could He Jin, who had always hated Yi Chen and Zhang Li, tolerate it? Furthermore, He Jin didn't believe that Yi Chen could reach Luoyang in time, nor did he believe that Yi Chen could deal with the overwhelming number of demi-humans outside Luoyang. Therefore, He Jin directly refuted Zhang Li. Not only did he refute him, but he also conveniently set a trap for Zhang Ran. "He Jin, shut your stinking mouth." Lu Hong was furious when he heard this and shouted at He Jin without hesitation. At this moment, the person commanding the army to defend Luoyang was He Jin. If not for this reason, Lu Hong would definitely have ordered for He Jin to be severely punished. Unfortunately, Lu Hong couldn't do that. Although Lu Hong was very muddle-headed, Lu Hong still understood such simple logic. When He Jin heard this, his expression changed slightly. He hurriedly bowed and said, "This humble subject is afraid." After saying this, He Jin closed his mouth. When Zhang Li, who was kneeling on the ground, heard this, he glanced at He Jin from the corner of his eye and then looked at Lu Hong. He solemnly bowed and said, 3 days. This servant is sure that the great general of Agile Cavalry will arrive in Luoyang within 3 days. At that time, the danger of Luoyang will be resolved. 3 days. 3 days is too long. Father Rang, do you have a way to make the great general of Agile Cavalry arrive in Luoyang today, and then destroy the demi-human army for me? Lu Hong hurriedly looked at Zhang Li and asked. Hearing this, Zhang Li's face immediately showed a fearless and loyal expression. He then solemnly kowtowed 3 times to Lu Hong. Your Majesty, this servant will leave the city and find the great general of Agile Cavalry. Even if this servant is torn apart by the demi-humans, this servant will have no regrets. When Lu Hong heard this, he was immediately moved. He then helped Zhang Li up and asked solemnly, Father Rang, are you confident? When Zhang Li heard this, his heart couldn't help but thump. He had never thought of really going out of the city to find Yi Chen. From the beginning until now, he had constantly put in good words for Yi Chen and constantly mentioned Yi Chen. In fact, it was also a gamble. This was because Zhang Li had a special treasure that could check the duration of the protective shield that covered the entire Luoyang city. And 3 days was the answer that Zhang Li came to after checking the protective shield many times. To be precise, Luoyang city would definitely be breached by the demi-humans in 3 days. If Yi Chen had not arrived in Luoyang at that time, or if he arrived in Luoyang but was unable to eliminate the demi-humans, the result would be the same. Within the city of Luoyang, from top to bottom, no one could survive. If Yi Chun arrived in Luoyang within 3 days and eliminated the demi-humans, then Zhang Li would definitely gain Lu Hong's trust and favor. Moreover, in the entire Great Han Empire, Zhang Li's reputation would reach an unparalleled height. Even the civil and military officials of the imperial court would fear him and not dare to make an enemy out of him. As for the reason, it was very simple. Yi Chun was promoted by Zhang Li. The more powerful Yi Chun was, the more powerful Zhang Li was. Of course, this was only what Zhang Li thought. As for the heartfelt words that Zhang Li said to Lu Hong, it was nothing more than to move Lu Hong and make Lu Hong give up on the idea of letting him out of the city. Who would have thought that although Lu Hong was moved, he still had the idea of letting him out of the city? Just as Zhang Li was rapidly thinking about how to deal with it, a cold snort sounded. Zhang Chongshi, it's no wonder the rumors say that you've been deceiving His Majesty and causing chaos in the imperial court. It seems that those rumors are true. When Zhang Li heard this, his expression immediately changed, but he quickly regained his composure. Lu Hong frowned, then looked at Zhang Li and sternly asked, "Let go of your father?" When Zhang Li heard this, he immediately began to wail, crying as he shouted, "Your Majesty, it doesn't matter if this servant dies, but this servant can't bear to part with your Majesty. But this servant knows that your Majesty is in dire need of people. Even if this servant is unwilling, this servant cannot watch your Majesty suffer. Your Majesty, this servant will set off now, but before I leave, this servant has something to say to the officials." When Zhang Li said this, the faces of all the civil and military officials of the imperial court changed. At this moment, Zhang Li wept as he glanced at the soft-hearted Lu Hong. Then he suddenly stood up and looked at the court. A second later, Zhang Li pointed at all the civil and military officials of the imperial court and sternly shouted, "You all claim to be the pillars of the Great Han, His Majesty's loyal subjects. But now Luoyang is in danger, yet none of you dare to leave the city. Instead, you brought His Majesty's imperial edict to summon the Great Han's generals to Luoyang. How are you any different from cowards? Pa! This lowly one looks down on you." After Zhang Li finished speaking, he bowed deeply to Lu Hong and walked out of the main hall with an indomitable will. The faces of all the civil and military officials of the imperial court instantly turned red. Zhang Li's big move was too vicious. He scolded and insulted them, tricking them all in an instant. Lu Hong did his best to steady his heart, which was about to explode, and then he looked at Zhang Li and shouted, "Let father come back." When Zhang Li heard this, he immediately stopped and turned to look at Lu Hong. He solemnly shook his head. "Your Majesty, this servant does not want your Majesty to suffer, nor does I want your Majesty to suffer any harm. I beg your Majesty to forgive this servant for disobeying the imperial edict. This servant must leave the city and find the great general of agile cavalry. Only he is the true loyal subject of the Great Han." After saying this, Zhang Li once again bowed to Lu Hong, then turned and left. When all the civil and military officials of the imperial court heard this, their faces suddenly became ugly. In the next second, a group of civil and military officials stepped out and solemnly bowed to Lu Hong. "Your Majesty, this humble subject will leave the city and find the great general of agile cavalry. Even if this humble subject is crushed to pieces, this humble subject will have no regrets." After these civil and military officials finished speaking, they all turned and walked out of the main hall without hesitation. "Your Majesty, this humble subject will also go. This humble subject will also go." One civil and military official after another said bold words and then walked out of the main hall. Chapter 502. When Lu Hong saw that the ministers were really scrambling to get out of the city, the anger in his heart suddenly came out with a bang. He couldn't help but be angry. Lu Hong didn't care if 1 or 2 officials left the city to find Yi Chen, but if all of them went, wouldn't Lu Hong be the only commander left in the court? How could this be allowed? The feeling of being forced to abdicate naturally appeared in Lu Hong's heart. How could he not be angry? After doing his best to calm his anger, Lu Hong angrily roared at the court. "All of you, get your asses back here!" It was true that Lu Hong was muddle-headed, but no matter how muddle-headed he was, he understood one thing. He could not allow the court to go to their deaths. Just now, he had asked Zhang Li if he was confident because he really wanted to get a definite answer. After all, Luoyang was under siege by the demi-humans. The longer they waited, the more dangerous it would be for Luoyang. Thus, Lu Hong wanted nothing more than for Yi Chen to get to Luoyang as soon as possible. But who would have thought that Zhang Li's words would provoke the court into forcing him to abdicate? It would be strange if Lu Hong wasn't angry. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, all the officials returned to the main hall one after another. Lu Hong glared hatefully at the officials. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly froze. Then, his expression changed. Without thinking, he directly rushed to the entrance of the main hall and loudly shouted, "Hurry! Hurry and bring father back here!" The court officials returned, but not Zhang Li. The truth was already very clear. Zhang Li had disobeyed the decree and left the city to find Yi Chen. When the guards at the entrance heard this, they hastily bowed and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." "Yes." After saying this, they went to find Zhang Li. When Lu Hong heard this, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He then looked at Wang Yun, who had just framed Zhang Li, and angrily shouted, "Wang Yun! How dare you? Your Majesty, this humble subject is afraid." What this humble subject said just now were all rumors from the outside world. Now it seems that rumors are just rumors. Zhang Changshi is loyal and devoted, and is really a pillar of the great Han dynasty. When Wang Yun heard this, he stepped out with a calm face, then bowed and said loudly. He Jin, who was standing at the front, stepped forward and bowed to Lu Hong. "Your Majesty, Wang Situ was just worried about Your Majesty's safety." In a moment of desperation, he spoke without thinking and mistakenly believed the rumors outside. "Please show mercy, Your Majesty. We beg for Your Majesty's mercy." The civil and military officials looked at each other, then bowed in unison. When Lu Hong heard this, the anger in his heart finally subsided a little. He glanced at all the civil and military officials, then coldly snorted and said no more. Not long after, a guard hurriedly ran into the main hall. When Lu Hong saw this, his heart couldn't help but tighten. The demonic beasts are invading? When the guard heard this, he was slightly stunned, then hurriedly bowed and said, "Your Majesty, the demonic beasts didn't break through the city wall, but Zhang Changshi insisted on going out of the city to find the general of agile cavalry." "What?" When Lu Hong heard this, he stood up with a ting sound. Lu Hong didn't expect that Zhang Li was really not afraid of death. He really wanted to go out of the city to find the general of agile cavalry, Yi Chen. A wave of gratitude appeared in Lu Hong's heart in an instant. After regaining his senses, Lu Hong hurriedly shouted, "Quick! Go! No matter what, you have to get my father back for me. Just say that this is my order. Don't disobey the order." "Yes, Your Majesty." When the guard heard this, he hurriedly bowed and responded, then quickly ran out of the main hall to chase after Zhang Li. When the civil and military officials heard this, they looked at each other, then they all looked down and stood still. When Lu Hong saw the actions of the civil and military officials, the anger in his heart suddenly came out again. But in the end, Lu Hong still didn't say anything. Although Lu Hong wanted to kill everyone, he couldn't do so. After the experience of being forced to abdicate, once, Lu Hong didn't want to experience it a second time. Unfortunately, Lu Hong still didn't understand the real reason for these officials' eye contact. Otherwise, Lu Hong would definitely understand one thing. The civil and military officials of the imperial court were working together to kill Zhongli. This point could be seen from the time when the civil and military officials of the imperial court left the main hall and returned to the main hall at different times. When the civil and military officials of the imperial court left, their speed wasn't very fast, and the time it took to return to the main hall was even longer. Compared to when they went out, it was dozens of times longer. At this time, Zhongli had already gone far. How could Zhongli hear Lu Hong's words? As for the guards, they had already been threatened by He Jin and the other civil and military officials, forbidding them from looking for Zhongli. Even the guard who had rushed to the main hall to say that Zhongli wasn't willing to return was acting according to the orders of He Jin and the other officials for Lu Hong to see. And all of this was a trap set by the civil and military officials of the imperial court for Zhongli to send himself to his death. Time slowly passed, but Zhongli still hadn't returned. Lu Hong's expression turned uglier and uglier. Luoyang, on the street. After leaving the imperial palace, Zhang Li's face turned paler and paler, and his body constantly trembled. Zhang Li knew that Wang Yun had framed Zhang Li. Zhang Li also knew that Lu Hong yearned for a turnaround, and it was precisely because he knew that Zhang Li had put on a show of suffering. In the end, he had even pulled in all the civil and military officials of the imperial court. But now Zhang Li had miscalculated. Lu Hong hadn't called for him to return. The officials who had followed him out of the main hall had long disappeared. Zhang Li wanted to ask, but he couldn't. Zhang Li also wanted to turn back, but he couldn't. Zhang Li didn't want to leave the city because leaving the city meant certain death. However, he had no choice but to leave the city because he had already made things clear in front of Lu Hong. Of course, Zhang Li had said that to get Lu Hong to speak again and have him return. But the truth was that from the moment Zhang Li left the main hall to the moment he left the imperial palace, he hadn't received any orders from Lu Hong to return. That shouldn't be the case. Why isn't His Majesty calling for me to return? Zhang Li thought to himself in fear. At this point, there was no turning back. The more he walked forward, the more terrified Zhang Li became. When he looked up at the clear Luoyang city gates, Zhang Li's heart couldn't help but beat violently. Leaving the city meant certain death. No matter how powerful one's martial arts were, it was impossible to survive the overwhelming Fei army. 300 miles northeast of Luoyang, space suddenly distorted. In the next second, a young man in a luxurious robe leaped out on a golden Pegasus. Behind him were 9 generals with extremely powerful auras. They were fully equipped with heaven-grade equipment, and their war horses were 1 in 10,000. 2 of them were even riding sturdy savage rhinoceroses with domineering auras. Rumble, rumble, 10,000 horses galloped, and the earth rumbled. Countless cavalrymen charged out of the distorted space. When all 41 million cavalrymen appeared, space returned to normal. If a player saw this army, they would immediately recognize its origins. It was the army of the great Han Empire's general of agile cavalry, Yi Chen. Chapter 503. Roar. As the army of Samsara City appeared, a deafening roar reverberated in the air. Countless monster clan birds and beasts turned around and looked at the Samsara City army that had suddenly appeared behind them. Why did the human army suddenly appear here? A gorilla asked in confusion when he saw the army of Samsara City appear out of nowhere. How would I know? A wild boar with black fur and a mouth full of fangs roared angrily. Who cares how they appeared? There are so few of them. They are not enough to fill the gaps between our teeth. Big Gray, Old Black, the 2 of you lead your people to destroy them. Otherwise, these damned humans will destroy us. A big lion with golden fur snorted coldly and then opened his mouth to roar. Yes, Your Majesty. A wild wolf covered in gray fur and a black eagle circling in the sky shouted in unison when they heard this. Wait, there's something wrong with this army. A cry of alarm suddenly came from the mouth of a pure white fox. What's wrong? Do you think they can destroy us? The Golden Lion King's eyes widened and he snorted coldly when he heard this. A cold light flashed across the pure white fox's eyes when it heard this. However, it quickly regained its composure. In the next second, the pure white fox said in a deep voice, I have learned human language. I purposely learned the human language. The commander's flag of this human cavalry army has the word Yi written on it. So what if it's Yi? Do you think our monster clan's billions of soldiers will be afraid of him? A black bear snorted and roared. The word Yi isn't much. However, if the commander of this cavalry army is Yi Chen, then things will be different. The pure white fox looked at the black bear and said calmly. As soon as the pure white fox finished its words, the sound of people drawing in cold breaths could be heard. Hiss, Old White, are you sure that this cavalry army belongs to Yi Chen? Golden Fur Lion King asked as he glanced at the cavalrymen of Samsara City who were charging towards the demon race army. Then, he looked at the pure white fox demonic beast and asked. When the pure white fox heard this, it nodded and said, probably. Most likely, this cavalry army appeared too suddenly. Moreover, their general's surname is Yi. Normal human players wouldn't dare to approach us, and would even hide far away. However, this cavalry army was clearly different. All I felt from them was a strong killing intent, and there wasn't the slightest trace of fear. Damn it, how is that possible? Wasn't Yi Chen at Jiulu? It's so far away, how could he have reached Luoyang in such a short amount of time? A tiger-type demonic beast roared as its eyes widened. So what if he's Yi Chen? Don't forget that we've been preparing the 10,000 demons soul-devouring array for so long. If Yi Chen hadn't come, then so be it. Now that he's here, let's use it against him. I don't believe that Yi Chen is so awesome that he can go against the 10,000 demons soul-devouring array. A black snake demon beast said coldly. Yes, use the 10,000 demons soul-devouring design. Who cares if he is Yi Chen? Use the 10,000 demons soul-devouring design and destroy them all. That's right, use the 10,000 demons soul-devouring design. After a series of roars, the Golden Lion King stood up like a human and roared. Big Gray, Old Black, the two of you lead your tribesmen to attack first. If you can destroy the cavalry army, then do so. The rest of you, follow me to prepare the 10,000 demons soul-devouring design. All right. The Gray Wolf Demon Beast and the Black Eagle Demon Beast in the sky responded in unison. After that, the two demon beasts let out earth-shattering howls. Oh, woo woo! In the next second, millions of Wolf Tribe members and Eagle Tribe members left the Demon Race Army and charged towards the Demon Race Army. Rumble, tens of thousands of horses galloped and the earth rumbled. Yi Chen, who was leading the charge, glanced at the millions of Eagle Race and Wolf Race and smiled coldly. He waved his right hand and the innate cardinal treasure, the God-slaying spear, and the innate spiritual treasure, the fire spirit pearl, appeared instantly. In the next second, Yi Chen raised the God-slayer and roared, Vermilion Bird Battle Formation. Following Yi Chen's roar, the fire spirit pearl vibrated. Buzz. Flames appeared in the sky and engulfed the Samsara Legion. Kill! 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 Shouts that shook the heavens resounded in the sky. In the next second, a strong murderous aura, accompanied by flames on the Samsara Legion, shot up to the sky with a boom. At the same time, Yi Chen and the Samsara Legion disappeared. In the sky, flames began to gather and then extended and changed shape continuously. After a few breaths of time, a fiery red bird with raging flames all over its body appeared in the sky. It was an extremely beautiful bird. In the Demon Clan's camp, the Golden Lion King looked at the huge bird that suddenly appeared in the sky. His eyes widened and then he roared in shock. What is this? I don't know. A wild boar demonic beast answered, its eyes full of fear. In the sky, the leader of the Eagle Tribe, who was rushing towards the Samsara City army, saw the huge bird in the sky and his eyes narrowed. Vermilion bird. It is the vermilion bird. Why, this is impossible. Just as the leader of the eagle tribe said, the huge bird that appeared in the sky was the vermilion bird, derived from the vermilion bird battle formation. At this moment, the vermilion bird appeared in the sky for the second time. Different from the first time, the vermilion bird was more lifelike this time. Its body was bigger and its aura was much stronger than the first time. In fact, this was all thanks to Yi Chun refining the fire spirit pearl. After all, the key to the vermilion bird battle formation was the fire spirit pearl. At this moment, the vermilion bird opened its eyes. Its scarlet, burning eyes instantly appeared in the world. At the same time, the flames burning around the vermilion bird were like boiling water, boiling freely and making crackling sounds in the air. Roar! A long cry that had been heard for a long time suddenly sounded. It was like a blade of time and space, cutting across the past and present. Vermilion bird. It is the vermilion bird. After feeling the aura from the vermilion bird, the Golden Lion King suddenly remembered something and shouted in shock. This is bad. The vermilion bird is one of the 4 divine beasts. Damn it, how is this possible? Didn't they say that this is Yi Chen's army? Can Yi Chen summon not only the white tiger, but also the vermilion bird? No, it can't be. It can't be Yi Chen who summoned it. Even if it wasn't summoned by Yi Chun, this vermilion bird is hostile towards us. Wouldn't those stupid birds be useless? The demonic beasts roared one after another. When the Golden Mane Lion King heard this, its lion face suddenly twisted. In the next second, the Golden Lion King looked up at the leaders of the birds in the sky and roared without hesitation. Use the 1,000 demons soul-devouring formation, quick! Chapter 504. The 10,000 Demon Soul-Devouring Formation was a formation unique to the Demon Clan. The stronger the Demon Clan was, the more powerful it would be. However, the Demon Clan army surrounding Luoyang did not have much cultivation. The strongest among them were only demon beasts. Therefore, the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation that they were about to set up would not be as powerful as the one in the Eldritch world. It was for this reason that the Golden Lion King ordered the Demon Clan to set up the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation in the sky. Otherwise, the demon soul-devouring formation on the ground would not be able to deal with the vermilion bird in the sky. On the city walls of Luoyang, the soldiers guarding Luoyang all looked at the vermilion bird the moment it appeared in the sky. They had no choice but to look. The vermilion bird in the sky was too big and was surrounded by flames. It was very domineering. What is that? A soldier looked at the vermilion bird in the sky and shouted in a daze. Demon, it must be a demon. Why would such a big demon suddenly appear? Can we still hold on? A soldier shouted in horror. No. That's the vermilion bird. Yes. It's the vermilion bird, the legendary divine beast. A Chiliarch looked carefully at the vermilion bird in the sky and his eyes lit up. Second Juzi, are you sure that's the vermilion bird? A general hurriedly asked the Chiliarch when he heard this. That's right, General. I have a book in my family that clearly depicts the appearances of the 4 mythological beasts. The vermilion bird in the book is exactly the same as this one. The Chiliarch nodded with certainty upon hearing this. The general was overjoyed when he heard this. He quickly looked at the vermilion bird in the sky. Will the divine beast help us? A soldier asked hopefully when he heard that the bird in the sky was the vermilion bird. I think so, definitely, in the sky, the Demon Clan army. Following the Golden Mane Lion King's command, the flying beasts with scarlet runes on their heads quickly gathered together, and then lined up in a special position one by one. In the next second, tens of millions of blood-red pillars of light rose from the bodies of these flying beasts and gathered at a single point. A buzzing sound was heard. A demonic red light that covered an area of 100 miles instantly appeared in the sky. At the same time, A powerful soul-devouring power burst out and rushed towards the vermilion bird. At this moment, in the demon race army, regardless of whether they were birds or beasts, none of them were at the level of a ferocious beast. To be precise, they had all reached the level of a demon beast. It was for this reason that they were able to withstand the vermilion bird's might and didn't fall to the ground. Of course, this also had a lot to do with the distance between them. If they approached the vermilion bird, they would also be affected by the vermilion bird's oppressive aura and be unable to fly normally. However, this disadvantage disappeared the moment the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation was formed. That was because the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation had integrated them into one entity. They had been too weak to fight against the vermilion bird, but now all of them were filled with courage. Therefore, the moment the 10,000 demon soul-devouring array was activated, they immediately charged towards the vermilion bird. In the sky, within the vermilion bird's body, Yi Chun, who was controlling the vermilion bird battle formation, narrowed his eyes when he saw the demonic red light suddenly appear in the distance. 10,000 demons soul-devouring array, these pieces of trash really managed to get it out in the past. He really wouldn't have been able to use the Samsara Legion so casually, but now Yi Chun sneered at this thought and then moved his mind. In the next second, the vermilion bird flapped its wings and charged towards the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation formed by the demon race's bird-type army. On the ground, the hundreds of millions of beasts looked up at the sky with their beastly eyes wide open. They were waiting for the vermilion bird to be destroyed. On the city walls of Luoyang, the millions of soldiers guarding the city looked up at the sky in unison. They clenched their fists tightly, their eyes filled with anticipation. At this moment, the soldiers guarding the city had already confirmed one thing. The mythical vermilion bird in the sky was here to destroy the demon race. In the sky, the vermilion bird and the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation formed by the demon race's bird-type army met in a breath's time. Destroy the vermilion bird. You must destroy the vermilion bird. Countless demon beasts shouted anxiously. Kill those birds of the demon race, you must kill them. The millions of soldiers guarding the city of Luoyang shouted with anticipation. Boom! 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 The sound of flames exploding instantly rang out under the expectant gazes of the soldiers and the demon race. The 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation formed by the demon race's bird-type army instantly turned into a moving sea of fire. The bird-type army of the demon race's bird-type army covered the sky and instantly turned the entire sky red. Ah! The shrill cries of birds rang out in waves and then disappeared into nothingness. The flames were merciless and burned everything. The 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation formed by the demon race's bird-type army could not withstand the vermilion bird's flames, not even for a second. On the ground, the demon race's bird-type army that was filled with anticipation widened their beastly eyes in disbelief. The 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation came from the primeval world and was the trump card of the demon race's bird-type army. It was extremely powerful, and they had thought of using it to attack Luoyang. They had even thought of using it to deal with the strongest human, Yi Chun. However, this time, the cruel reality was placed in front of them. Not only did the vermilion birds attack destroy the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation, it also burned tens of millions of bird-type demon race beasts into nothingness. On the ground, among the demon race's bird-type army. No. This is impossible. It's fake. It's fake. The Golden Lion King's eyes widened as it roared furiously. How can this be? How can this be? The 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation. This is the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation. A black-furred gorilla stared blankly at the sky and roared in disbelief. Who can tell me who the mighty demon race cultivator who spread the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation is? I'm going to kill him too. A black bear beast roared with a murderous aura. The demon race roared crazily because the scene in the sky was too shocking. The demon race's bird-type army that stretched as far as the eye could see was instantly set ablaze. Moreover, it was set ablaze after the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation was activated. The merciless flames lit up the sky and stunned all the demon race players. Long live! Long live! Long live! Deafening cheers suddenly sounded from the city walls of Luoyang. The vermilion bird was so powerful and domineering that it destroyed tens of millions of bird-type demon race beasts that they could not harm. To be precise, the soldiers on the city walls of Luoyang saw hope. Hope for survival. As long as the vermilion bird was around, they would not have to worry about the demon race's army, no matter how large it was. Chapter 505. On the streets of Luoyang, Zhang Li, who was about to reach the city gate, was stunned when he heard the deafening cheers from the city wall. Could it be that His Majesty has left the palace? Zhang Li was overjoyed when he thought of this and hurriedly looked back. In the next second, Zhang Li was stunned on the spot. The emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, Lu Hong, didn't appear at all. After coming back to his senses, Zhang Li couldn't help but look up at the city wall. There, the soldiers were still cheering and jumping in joy. His excited voice caused all of Luoyang to buzz. The city wall of Luoyang was extremely tall, and Zhang Li wasn't far from the city wall, so he naturally couldn't see the scene of the vermilion bird killing tens of millions of demons. Otherwise, Zhang Li definitely wouldn't be so confused. What's going on? Could it be that reinforcements have arrived? Thinking of this, Zhang Li's eyes lit up, and he rushed toward the city wall without thinking. General of Agile Cavalry, please don't let it be you. Otherwise, I won't have a good time, Zhang Li thought to himself with great hope as he ran. On the streets of Luoyang, the citizens who didn't know what was going on looked at the city wall with puzzled faces. In the sky 150 kilometers outside Luoyang City, the vermilion bird that had destroyed tens of millions of flying demons flapped its wings again and disappeared in a flash with flames filling the sky. Boom! 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 The sound of flames exploding sounded again. Countless flying demons were ignited in the blink of an eye and turned into dust that scattered with the wind. The flames were merciless and burned everything. Although the flying demons in the sky were all at the level of monsters, they couldn't withstand the vermilion bird's flames at all. Burn, burn, burn. After a few breaths, the flying demon army hovering in the sky was burned to ashes. Not a single one was spared. In Luoyang City, Zhang Li, who was running toward the city wall, was suddenly stunned because the entire city was suddenly illuminated by flames. However, there was no fire in Luoyang. After coming back to his senses, Zhang Li hurriedly looked up. In the next second, Zhang Li saw an unforgettable scene. The flying demons in the sky above Luoyang were all ignited. What's going on? Zhang Li couldn't understand the sudden change in the sky, because it was too unbelievable. The flying demon clan army that covered the sky and the sun, at least tens of millions of them, were all set ablaze in an instant. When Zhang Li snapped to his senses, the long-awaited sunlight instantly shone on Luoyang. On the streets of Luoyang, the people who were originally terrified and didn't know what to do in the future all looked up at the sky. After a brief moment of sluggishness, there was an explosion of cheers. The heavens have spoken! The heavens have spoken! Immortals! Immortals have come to save us! Sob, 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 I finally don't have to die on the city walls of Luoyang. The millions of city guards were stunned when they saw the vermilion bird exterminate all the flying demons in the sky in the time it took to drink a cup of tea. Then, they raised their weapons and roared in unison. God bless the big man! God bless the Great Han Dynasty! Imperial Palace, Great Hall. This. The guards on duty outside the main hall stared at the sky, dumbstruck. That shocking scene would forever be engraved in their hearts. Imperial Palace Main Hall. Lu Hong looked at the sudden light outside the main hall and couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he shouted in alarm. "What's going on? Hurry up and investigate." The flying demon clan had covered the sky and the sun, preventing sunlight from reaching the ground. But now, the world had suddenly returned to normal. How could the already panicked Lu Hong not be frightened? After all, the ones surrounding Luoyang were the Fey race. Lu Hong didn't know what abilities the Fey race had. If the Fey race had used some kind of powerful move to cause this, wouldn't it be dangerous? With Lu Hong's shout, a guard commander rushed into the main hall with a face full of ecstasy. The moment he entered, he bowed and said, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, the Fey race, the Flying Demon clan has been exterminated." When Lu Hong heard this, he was stunned. When he came to his senses, Lu Hong stood up and shouted in alarm. What? Lu Hong didn't know how many Flying Demon clans there were, but he was certain that there were more than 100 million of them. But now, the guard was saying that the Flying Demon clan army had been exterminated. How could Lu Hong not be shocked? He didn't dare to believe it, but he was even more hopeful that it was true. Thus, Lu Hong impatiently asked the guard to confirm it once more. In truth, it wasn't just Lu Hong who was shocked. All the officials and generals of the court were also shocked by this news. When the guard commander heard Lu Hong's question, he tried his best to stabilize his similarly ecstatic mood. He then bowed again and said loudly, "Your Majesty, the Flying Demon clan army has been exterminated." Lu Hong was overjoyed to hear this and hastily asked, "By who?" When the guard commander heard this, he hurriedly bowed again and said, "Your Majesty, this general doesn't know, but this general feels that an immortal must have taken action." The Flying Demon clan army was instantly burned to death. Lu Hong's eyes brightened, and then he threw his head back and wildly laughed. "Ha ha, good. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Congratulations, Your Majesty." When the officials heard this, they were all overjoyed and bowed to Lu Hong in unison. "Let's go. Follow me to see the immortal." When Lu Hong heard this, he immediately became extremely excited. Without thinking, he directly shouted. After saying this, he left the dragon throne and walked out of the hall. All the officials and generals hurriedly bowed. "Your Majesty, there may still be remnants of the demon clan. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to leave the palace now." "Bullshit. I am the Emperor. Now that the immortal has come to the mortal realm to exterminate the demon clan for me, I have nothing to fear." Lu Hong was furious and roared. At this moment, Lu Hong's heart was filled with excitement. The heavens had come to help him. Otherwise, how could the Flying Demon clan army be instantly exterminated? Of course, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Lu Hong wanted to use this opportunity to show off. To be more precise, Lu Hong wanted the entire world, especially the officials and generals of the court, to see that he, Lu Hong, was the true son of heaven, favored by the heavens. Anyone who dared to oppose him would be punished by the heavens. When the civil and military officials heard this, they all looked at each other. Then they all bowed and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." At this moment, all the officials and generals, regardless of whether they had any ulterior motives, kept their thoughts to themselves. The sudden appearance of an immortal had frightened them. They did not dare to dissuade Lu Hong from doing anything. When Lu Hong heard this, he swept an extremely domineering glance over all the civil and military officials. Then, with a cold snort, he strode out of the hall. The moment he stepped out of the hall, Lu Hong looked up. When Lu Hong saw the empty sky, he immediately looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. Then he shouted, "Follow us to the walls!" Chapter 506. As soon as Lu Hong finished speaking, all the civil and military officials of the imperial court were stunned. They never expected Lu Hong to be so bold. Not only did he want to leave the palace to see the immortal, he even wanted to go to the city walls. That was Luoyang's first line of defense, and it was extremely dangerous. Although a protective barrier had suddenly appeared around Luoyang, preventing the demons from attacking, no one could guarantee how long it would last. If the barrier broke the moment they reached the city walls, it would be no different from sending them to their death. After a general snapped out of his daze, he hurriedly bowed. Your Majesty, it's true that the flying demons in the sky have been wiped out, but the demons on the ground, there's still no news. It's too dangerous to rashly go to the city walls. That's right, Your Majesty. It's too dangerous to go to the city walls. Your Majesty, please reconsider. A civil official hurriedly bowed. We implore Your Majesty to reconsider. The civil and military officials looked at each other, then bowed in unison. When the excited Lu Hong heard this, his expression immediately changed. At the same time, his heart couldn't help but thump. It was obvious that the official's words had struck a chord with Lu Hong. After a few seconds, Lu Hong let out a long breath and shouted, "Even if the demon beasts outside the city walls are destroyed, they will still be destroyed. Even if the army of demons and beasts outside the city hasn't been annihilated, I'm not worried because the deities have already taken action for me. You can rest assured." With that said, Lu Hong turned around and strode forward. Lu Hong sounded very confident, and his actions also seemed very confident. However, from the strange look in his eyes and the slight trembling in his voice, it was not difficult to tell one thing. Lu Hong was feigning calmness, and the truth was as such. However, no matter how afraid Lu Hong was, he still had to go. This was because this immortal's descent was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. To be precise, it was a good opportunity for him to consolidate the Great Han and raise the prestige of the imperial family. Furthermore, it was a unique opportunity. Therefore, Lu Hong did not want to miss this opportunity, nor could he miss it. As long as he appeared on the city walls and let the commoners in the city see him with their own eyes, in that case, the common people would automatically connect the immortal descending to the mortal world to Lu Hong. Because he was the emperor of the Great Han dynasty. Immortals naturally wouldn't descend to the lower realm for the sake of the common people. If they wanted to descend, it would be for him, Lu Hong. And the people would definitely think so too. At that time, his name would definitely spread throughout the world. Then, all the people would know that he, Lu Hong, was the true son of the heavens. It was the will of the heavens for him to become the emperor. Otherwise, why would immortals descend to the lower realm and protect him? Of course, what Lu Hong wanted the most was to use this opportunity to tell all the people in the world who had the heart of rebellion one thing. Going against Lu Hong was equivalent to going against the heavens. There was only one outcome for them, death. Lu Hong was muddle-headed, but he also knew how to make a choice. He also knew how important this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity was. Moreover, he firmly believed that since the immortal had already made his move, he would definitely not allow him to be in any danger. It was also because of these reasons that Lu Hong ignored the possible danger and was determined to go to the city wall. When the officials heard this, they looked at each other, then bowed together and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." With that, all the civil and military officials followed Lu Hong out of the palace. Outside Luoyang City, in the demon army. All dead. The Golden Lion King stared at the empty sky with his eyes wide open. Then, he stuttered and yelled. How could this be? A black wild boar demon beast, its eyes wide open, shouted in horror. This is too fast. A hedgehog demonic beast looked at the sky that was cleared in a few breaths, and suddenly shivered. Then, it shrieked in a shrill voice. Great King, let's go back to the demon realm. A green snake demon beast looked at the Golden Lion King in horror and then shouted. Yes, Great King, let's go back quickly. If we don't go back, we're all going to die. A black bear demon beast shouted in panic. When the Golden Lion King heard the shouts of his subordinates, his entire lion face suddenly became twisted, then he roared. You're not allowed to go back. Even if you go back, you'll die. Don't forget, this is the human realm, it's very easy to become a demon. Moreover, we're also players, demon race players. Even if we die, we won't really die. What's there to be afraid of? Great King, it's best if we go back now. This way, we still have a chance to ascend. Otherwise, not only will we not gain any benefits, it will also be very dangerous. Don't forget about that vermilion bird. Moreover, the human race still has Yi Chen. If he was killed by Yi Chen, he would also die in the real world. When a pure white fox demon beast heard this, its fox eyes narrowed, then looked at the Golden Lion King and said. When the Golden Lion King heard the fox demon beast's words, he couldn't help but shiver. Naturally, he knew how terrifying the vermilion bird was. Just now, he saw with his own eyes how the sky-burning fire burned hundreds of millions of demon beasts into nothingness. However, he was unwilling to give up because if he killed Lu Hong, the demon race would gain great benefits. Moreover, if he killed Lu Hong's demon beasts directly, he would gain even more benefits. It was because of this that the Golden Lion King didn't agree to return to the demon realm immediately. He wanted the demon race's army to disperse and retreat, avoid the vermilion bird, then find a chance to kill Lu Hong. This way, he would be able to reap great benefit. However, when he thought of how terrifying the vermilion bird was, the Golden Lion King suddenly lost his confidence. Just as the Golden Lion King was thinking, a red beam of light suddenly descended in front of the Samsara City army. The moment the beam of light dissipated, Yi Chen and the Samsara Legion appeared on the spot. Long live the Lord! Long live the Lord! Long live the Lord! Earth-shattering cheers instantly sounded from the Samsara City army. Yi Chen listened to the excited and worshipful shouts and smiled. Then, he looked at the Samsara Legion soldiers. In the next second, Yi Chen nodded with satisfaction. Not bad, great heaven state peak stage. Just as Yi Chen thought, the 510,000 Samsara Legion soldiers all advanced to the Divine General Peak Stage or the Great Heaven State Peak Stage without exception. Their martial power had reached 100. One more step and they would reach the Mortal Evolution State. However, this was the novice region of the Three Kingdoms, and the soldiers were ordinary people. They weren't special beings in this world, so they couldn't break through to the Mortal Evolution State. Of course, Yi Chen didn't care about this because these soldiers could go to the real world. In the real world, there were no restrictions like the novice region of the Three Kingdoms. Of course, Yi Chen wouldn't let the entire Samsara Legion break through to the Mortal Evolution State in a short period of time. This was because once they broke through to the Mortal Evolution State, they would definitely be sealed. This way, they wouldn't be able to use their qi. Yi Chen didn't want this to happen. One must know that Yi Chen was planning to go to the underground palace and take the 9 cauldrons of the ancient kingdom after annihilating the demon race. Chapter 507. Once they entered the underground palace, they would definitely encounter the Pre-Qin Terracotta Army, Pre-Qin generals, and Emperor Qin. Even the weakest of them was a king-level general, and each of them was very powerful. Of course, Yi Chen wasn't afraid of this and wasn't worried at all. After all, Yi Chen was already a nirvana state being. Yi Chen alone could sweep through the underground palace and snatch the 9 cauldrons of the ancient kingdom. However, Yi Chen didn't want to waste it like this. One must know that the Pre-Qin Terracotta Army and Pre-Qin generals in the underground palace were all special beings. The weakest of them was a king-level general. Killing them would not only give a lot of experience, but they would also drop good equipment and cultivation method. This was an excellent training ground. How could Yi Chen let it go to waste? Therefore, Yi Chen couldn't go to the underground palace by himself. If he wanted to go, he would bring his troop. The Samsara Legion was Yi Chen's choice. Of course, the Samsara Legion was already at the peak stage of the Khanate state. They couldn't improve in the novice zone of the Three Kingdoms. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that they could continue to accumulate experience by killing monsters. Once they accumulated enough, their strength would increase explosively after the entire nation ascended. This way, the Samsara Legion could directly participate in the war against the demons. Yi Chen didn't even need to lead the troop. It was because of these reasons that Yi Chen didn't plan to let the Samsara Legion break through to the mortal evolution state in the real world. Otherwise, the Samsara Legion would definitely be sealed by the Heaven Tao of the Three Kingdoms. This way, the Samsara Legion wouldn't be able to fight against the Preaching Terracotta Army at all. After all, they were all cultivating a saint-level cultivation method. Once they were sealed, their bodies wouldn't be strong at all. Thinking of this, Yi Chen could not help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he looked at Zhao Yunjing, Dian Xiong, Guan Er, Zhang San, Zhang He, Zhao Meng, Chu Yi, Gao Lan, and Gao Shun. Prepare to charge. Yes, my lord. When Zhao Yun, Dian Xiong, Guan Er, Zhang San, and the others heard this, their eyes suddenly widened, and then they all bowed and said loudly. When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded and then looked at the endless army of monsters. Since you're still not running, I'll add fuel to the fire. Thinking of this, Yi Chen smiled coldly. He raised the God Slayer in his right hand and shouted, "You're too weak. White Tiger Battle Formation. Kill, kill, kill." The 510,000 Samsara Legion soldiers roared in unison. An extremely strong murderous aura appeared in an instant and then gathered in the sky. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic white tiger appeared in the sky. Roar! An earth-shattering roar instantly reverberated throughout the land. An extremely brutal killing intent suddenly erupted from the white tiger's body, becoming denser and denser, more and more intense. It caused one's entire body to feel cold, and even one's soul began to tremble. As the incomparably huge white tiger appeared in the sky, the eyes of the demonic beasts in the army of demonic beasts shrank. Yi Chen. That's Yi Chen. A black-furred wild boar looked at the incomparably huge white tiger in the sky and shouted in horror. Damn it, I was wondering why a vermilion bird suddenly appeared. So it was summoned by that bastard Yi Chen. A demonic beast with spikes all over its body shrieked in horror. My king, let's hurry back to the demonic realm. Yi Chen isn't someone we can deal with now. A black-furred gorilla hurriedly looked at the Golden Lion King and shouted in panic. The demonic beasts spoke one after another. They were all shocked and terrified. The demonic race players already knew that Yi Chen could summon the white tiger. It was also because of this that the demonic race players realized that the vermilion bird didn't appear out of nowhere. It was summoned by Yi Chen. They were originally afraid of Yi Chen. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spent so much effort to prepare the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation. They were originally looking forward to using the 10,000 demon soul-devouring formation to eliminate Yi Chen. However, the cruel reality told them one thing. What they relied on was useless against Yi Chen. This was because the vermilion bird was also summoned by Yi Chen. Hurry! Hurry back to the demonic realm! The Golden Lion King immediately snapped out of his shock when he heard the cries of his subordinate. He didn't even think before shouting. On the city walls of Luoyang, when the millions of soldiers guarding the city saw the sudden appearance of the white tiger in the sky, they were all stunned. They didn't expect the white tiger to appear after the vermilion bird. After they snapped out of their shock, the city walls of Luoyang exploded with cheers and shouts. God bless the Han dynasty! God bless the human race! Just as the soldiers were shouting excitedly, head eunuch Zhang Li climbed up the city walls. When he saw the incomparably huge white tiger in the sky, his eyes widened in shock. White tiger! This! Zhang Li shouted with a face full of shock. At this moment, the white tiger landed on the ground and enveloped Yi Chen and the Samsara Legion. In the next second, the white tiger leaped and turned into a ray of white light, disappearing in a flash. Boom! 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 A series of explosions sounded in an instant. A 200-mile-long path, shrouded in blood mist, appeared on the huge battlefield. The White Tiger's attack instantly killed 20 million monsters. When Yi Chen realized this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Not bad, not bad. It was at least 1/3 more than what he had expected. The White Tiger and the Vermilion Bird had different attacking methods. Naturally, the results would be different. To put it simply, the White Tiger's attack was violent destruction, while the Vermilion Bird's attack was burning. Run! Run! Dense screams sounded as the 200-mile-long path of blood mist appeared. Rumble! Rumble! Tens of thousands of monsters galloped and the earth rumbled. Hundreds of millions of demons and beasts were madly charging toward the southwest. When Yi Chen saw this, his eyes widened. So the entrance to the monster realm was in the southwest. When he thought of this, Yi Chen couldn't help but laugh wildly. Yi Chen could completely annihilate the entire Yao clan without wasting too much time. However, Yi Chen didn't do so because Yi Chen needed to train his troop. More importantly, Yi Chen wanted to confirm the location of the entrance to the monster realm, or rather, the entrance to the newbie area of the monster realm. Yi Chen wanted to confirm the location of the entrance to the newbie area of the monster realm for only one purpose, and that was to block the entrance and prevent the monsters from safely returning to the newbie area of the monster realm. Even if the monsters of the monster realm returned, they would have to die and contribute EXP, equipment, and skills to the soldiers of Samsara City. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, Zhao Yun, Dian Xiong, Zhang San, Guan Er, and the others all raised their weapons and shouted, "Charge! Kill! Kill! Kill!" Deafening roars sounded instantly. In the next second, Zhao Yun, Guan Er, Zhang San, Dian Xiong, and the others led the 1.9 million cavalry of Samsara City and charged. Chapter 508. Rumble! Rumble! Thousands of horses galloped and the earth rumbled. The 1.9 million cavalrymen of Samsara City raised their spears and followed Zhao Yun, Dian Xiong, Zhang San, Guan Er, Gao Lan, Chu Yi, Zhao Meng, Gao Shun, and Zhang He. They charged into the endless army of monsters and beasts. The earth was shaking and the monsters were howling. Hundreds of millions of monsters and beasts rushed toward the southwest, ignoring the cavalrymen of Samsara City who were about to reach them. They knew that Yi Chen, the most powerful man of the human race, had come and destroyed the army of hundreds of millions of monsters and beasts. If they did not return to the beginner's area quickly, they would all die. No one would live. At this moment, the army of monsters and beasts had lost all their courage. It was because of the overbearing sky-burning fire and the ferocious White Tiger. They could not resist and they could not resist. This was what the army of hundreds of millions of monsters and beasts were thinking. Rumble! Thousands of horses galloped and the earth rumbled. As soon as the cavalrymen of Samsara City came into contact with the army of monsters and beasts, they began to kill mercilessly. In the front row, the 400,000 cavalrymen of the Khanate realm stabbed a monster to death with their spears. They did not stop and continued to charge forward. Behind them, the 1.5 million cavalrymen who had not reached the Khanate realm continued to charge forward with their spears. Although they could not kill the monsters on the spot, the cavalrymen behind them would follow up with their spears. If they could not kill the monsters, the cavalrymen behind them would continue to do so. Rumble! The cavalrymen of Samsara City charged again and again, mercilessly reaping the lives of all the monsters that stood in their way. 100 miles southeast of Luoyang, Yi Chen observed the situation of the cavalrymen of Samsara City with his divine sense and nodded with satisfaction. With Zhao Yunjing, Dian Xiong, Guan Er, and Zhang San leading 400,000 Xiantian-level soldiers to pave the way, these demonic beasts were simply unable to block the charge of the cavalry, not to mention that these demonic beasts were already scared out of their wits. Not bad, not bad. At this thought, Yi Chen could not help smiling. the city walls of Luoyang. Emperor Lu Hong, who wanted to show off and intimidate the world, led his officials and generals up the city walls of Luoyang after the cavalry of Samsara City started charging. Lu Hong, who had just reached the top of the wall, immediately saw the 1,000-meter-tall white tiger 100 miles away. Lu Hong instantly froze on the spot, and then he cried out in alarm, "What? What is that? Demon! Demon!" When a civil official saw the white tiger with a tyrannical killing intent, he was immediately frightened and stuttered as he shouted, "Protect His Majesty!" One of the generals shouted as he rushed to Lu Hong's side and roared. The city guards, who were fanatically looking at the white tiger in the distance, heard these shouts and looked over. When they saw Lu Hong, they were all stunned. Then, they hurriedly knelt on one knee and bowed loudly. "Greetings, Your Majesty! Who can tell me, what is that tiger outside the city?" Lu Hong hurriedly asked when he heard the shouts of the soldiers. The millions of soldiers on the city walls did not give Lu Hong the slightest bit of courage. This was because the tiger outside the city was too damn big. From afar, it looked like a mountain. As soon as Lu Hong finished speaking, a cry of tears of joy rang out. "Congratulations, Your Majesty! Congratulations, Your Majesty!" As soon as the voice fell, the head eunuch, Zhang Li, followed the soldiers and ran over to Lu Hong. "Father, aren't you?" When Lu Hong saw Zhang Li suddenly running in front of him, he could not help but be stunned. When Zhang Li heard this, he knelt on the ground with a plop. Then, he bowed emotionally and said, "Your Majesty, this servant was indeed going out of the city. However, before this servant left the city, I saw the divine beast vermilion bird exterminating hundreds of millions of demon clan birds. At that time, this servant thought that the divine beast vermilion bird must have come down to eradicate the demon clan for Your Majesty. It was precisely because of this thought that this servant specially ran to the city walls to see what was going on. In the end, this servant saw the divine beast white tiger. It displayed its might and exterminated countless demon clan birds with one blow." "Father Rang, you mean that the demon clan birds in the sky were exterminated by the divine beast vermilion bird, and the one outside the city was the divine beast white tiger?" When Lu Hong heard this, his eyes widened and he asked. When Zhang Li heard this, he nodded heavily and then said excitedly, "Yes, Your Majesty. Yes, Your Majesty. Those demon clan birds in the sky were burned to death by the divine beast vermilion bird. The huge tiger outside the city is the divine beast white tiger." When Zhang Li said this, he suddenly looked at Lu Hong with incomparable admiration and then shouted loudly, "Your Majesty, you are not only the first emperor of all time, but also the Son of Heaven. This servant earnestly requests Your Majesty to allow this servant to serve Your Majesty forever." "Good! Ha ha!" When Lu Hong heard this, he immediately looked up and laughed wildly. All of the civil and military officials looked at each other, and then all of them let out a sigh of relief. Regardless of whether they were selfish or rebellious, they were not willing to be exterminated by the demon clan. Now, the appearance of the divine beast vermilion bird and the divine beast white tiger had undoubtedly shattered the stone hanging in their hearts. At this moment, General He Jin glanced at the white tiger outside the city, then took a step forward and bowed. "Congratulations, Your Majesty! Congratulations, Your Majesty! Congratulations, Your Majesty! Congratulations, Your Majesty!" At this moment, all the court officials bowed in unison. When Lu Hong heard this, he glanced at the court officials and then walked straight to the war drums placed on the city walls. Glancing at the drumstick, Lu Hong picked it up without hesitation and struck it. Thump, 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 the dull and drawn-out sound instantly reached Yi Chen's ears. Yi Chen, who was about to control the white tiger to rush to the entrance of the fiend race's newbie area to block the entrance, could not help but be stunned when he heard the drumbeats. This was because the drumbeats were made on the battlefield to boost the morale of the soldiers. Now, other than the demon clan army running wildly on the city walls, the white tiger was the only thing that could be seen. It was impossible to see the cavalry of Samsara city. After all, they were too far away. However, the current situation was that the war drums that boosted the morale of the soldiers had started to sound. Was this to boost the morale of the white tiger, or did someone recognize the white tiger battle formation? Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the system's notification suddenly rang out. Ding! The emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, Lu Hong, is personally boosting the morale of all Samsara city soldiers outside Luoyang by 2 attack power, 2 defense power, and 2 morale. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yi Chen was once again stunned. Although Yi Chen had released his divine sense several times and covered a radius of 1,000 miles around Luoyang, Yi Chen's attention was on the demon clan army and did not pay attention to Luoyang city. Now, the system's notification undoubtedly told Yi Chen one thing. The one who was boosting the morale was Lu Hong. Damn it, Lu Hong knew that the vermilion bird and the white tiger would not hurt him, so he ran to the city walls to show off. Chapter 509. Not only did Lu Hong run to the city walls of Luoyang, but he also cheered for the white tiger. Yi Chen could tell what his motive was. Because he could tell, Yi Chen concluded that Lu Hong was just pretending. Of course, Lu Hong was just pretending. His real motive was to announce to the world. He, Lu Hong, was the son of heaven, blessed by the heavens. Whether it was an official, a commoner, or a commoner, they all had to be well-behaved people who knew their place. Otherwise, they would be punished by God. Lu Hong's idea was good. He wanted to restore the dignity of the Great Han Dynasty and consolidate the power of the Han Dynasty. After all, in recent years, the Great Han Dynasty had been plagued by disasters. Rebellions occurred frequently, especially this year, when the Golden Turban Rebellion swept the entire country. Unfortunately, what Lu Hong didn't know was that how could the Great Han Empire, which was already riddled with holes and rotten to the core, be turned around so easily. Moreover, Lu Hong did not know that he did not have long to live. Even if he really shocked the world, he would not be able to maintain it for long. Once Lu Hong died, the Great Han Empire would be completely destroyed. Of course, Lu Hong being pretentious was one thing. To Yi Chen, it was not a bad thing. After all, Lu Hong's cheers doubled the attack power, defense power, and morale of the cavalry of Samsara city. Morale did not have much effect on the cavalry of Samsara city, whose morale was already at its peak. However, their attack power and defense power were real. In this way, not only would it be easier for the cavalry of Samsara city to kill the monsters, but it would also ensure their own safety to the greatest extent. It should be known that although the demonic beasts of the monster clan didn't want to continue fighting and were running for their lives, they would still fight back after being attacked. After all, cornered beasts would still fight back. Of course, Zhao Yun, Guan Er, Zhang San, Dian Xiong, and the rest of the 400,000 Xiantian realm soldiers were the vanguard. The counterattack of the monsters had not yet appeared. However, if there were any accidents, the cavalrymen of Samsara city who had not reached the innate realm would definitely suffer casualties. And now, Lu Hong's posturing had helped Yi Chen a lot. Double the attack power was enough to ensure that the cavalrymen of Samsara city who had not reached the Xiantian realm would be able to kill the demonic beasts instantly. The double defensive power also greatly increased the safety of the soldiers. Lu Hong's appearance was really timely. Otherwise, those soldiers who hadn't advanced to the Xiantian realm might really have suffered a lot of casualties. With this in mind, Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his brows. Then, he looked southwest of Luoyang, at a valley about 300 kilometers away. The entrance to the demon clan's novice zone was there. Previously, when Yi Chen had been teleported over, he had deliberately released his divine sense. According to the memories of his previous life, he had investigated the location of the entrance to the demon clan's novice zone. Unfortunately, no matter how Yi Chen probed, he could not find the entrance to the demon race's novice zone. As for the reason, it was not very complicated. In fact, it could even be said to be very simple. The entrance to the demon clan's novice zone would only appear when the demon clan had completely failed or when the demon clan had given up attacking the human clan. Of course, this was Yi Chen's judgment after his failed probing. However, Yi Chen could not be sure if the location of the entrance to the demon clan's novice zone was the same as in his previous life. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not have scared the demon clan's army of beasts and made them think of escaping on their own. Then, he forced the entrance to the demon clan's novice zone out. And the result proved Yi Chen's judgment. When the demon clan's army of beasts began to escape, the entrance to the demon clan's novice zone appeared. However, its location was different from the one in his previous life. It's about time. If we don't go over now, the demonic beasts of the demon clan will really run back to the demon clan's novice zone. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's mind moved. In the next second, the white tiger turned into light spots and disappeared. Yi Chen and the Samsara Legion appeared in the same place. On the city walls of Luoyang. Where's the divine beast white tiger, why is it gone? He Jin, who was observing the white tiger, was stunned when he saw the white tiger suddenly disappear. Then, he shouted in shock. How could this be? There are hundreds of millions of beasts outside the city. How could the divine beast white tiger just leave like that? A civil official shouted in a daze. Could it be that the divine beast white tiger had something to do and left? Just as all the civil and military officials were exclaiming in shock, Lu Hong hurriedly stopped beating the drum and turned to look outside the city. When Lu Hong saw that the 1,000-meter-tall white tiger outside the city had really disappeared, his expression changed drastically. He had originally wanted to use the white tiger to show off. Who would have thought that the white tiger would disappear with just one beat of the drum? This was not the result that Lu Hong wanted to see. 100 miles east of Luoyang, Yi Chen glanced at the Samsara Legion soldiers and shouted, 10,000 troops! 10,000 men in a team, scatter and charge! Yes, my lord! When the Samsara Legion soldiers heard this, they bowed and saluted in unison. After that, they divided into 51 units and quickly dispersed. In the next second, 51 cavalry units charged ferociously towards the army of beasts of the demon clan. Rumble, rumble, 10,000 horses galloped and the earth rumbled. The Samsara Legion had just come into contact with the army of beasts of the demon clan when they began their frenzied harvesting mode. The demonic beasts of the demon clan fell to the ground one after another like wheat being harvested from a field. Even though the Samsara Legion did not use the Khanate battle formation and was even divided into 51 cavalry units, they were just as domineering and ferocious. They were all in the Khanate realm and had full combat strength. Killing the beasts was a piece of cake. This was especially so for the veterans of the Samsara Legion. Each of them was riding a savage rhino and was not inferior to the beasts that were galloping wildly. Rumble, 10,000 horses galloped and the earth rumbled. Wherever the cavalry of Samsara city passed, the corpses of the beasts were strewn all over the ground and blood flowed freely. The roars and wails of the beasts, the sounds of weapons piercing into the bodies of the beasts, and the cries of battle constantly intertwined and then echoed throughout the boundless battlefield. Yi Chen used his divine sense to check the battlefield again. After confirming that the soldiers who had not reached the Khanate realm were not in danger, he squeezed the horse's belly with his legs. Nay, a thunderous roar sounded instantly. In the next second, Little Gold, the Pegasus, galloped forward and disappeared. In a huge valley 600 miles southwest of Luoyang, the space suddenly distorted. In the next second, a young man in a luxurious robe appeared here riding a golden Pegasus. The moment the young man appeared, a leopard beast suddenly leaped into the valley and then galloped towards Yi Chen. As it galloped, it turned its head to look. Suddenly, a smug smile appeared on its leopard face. However, in the next second the leopard beast was suddenly stunned. It then raised its head and looked forward. When it saw the young man riding the golden Pegasus, its eyes narrowed and it screamed, "Yi Chen!" Chapter 510. The leopard monster had never seen Yi Chen before, but it knew that Yi Chen had a unique golden Pegasus. And the young man in the valley was riding a golden Pegasus. In addition, the young man didn't show any fear when he saw it. Not only was he not afraid, but he was also unusually calm. It wasn't hard to guess. The young man was the number one human, Yi Chen. After the leopard monster made this guess, it was scared out of its wit. It naturally knew that Yi Chen had come to Luoyang City. Otherwise, it wouldn't have run away. But it didn't expect that Yi Chen would suddenly appear in this valley and block the entrance to the beginner's area of the shifters. Seeing Yi Chen riding a golden Pegasus, an indescribable fear appeared in the leopard monster's heart. It knew Yi Chen's strength very well, and it also knew how cruel Yi Chen was. Now that it had encountered Yi Chen, how could it not be afraid? Yi Chen glanced at the leopard monster indifferently. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the black and thick God-slayer instantly appeared. The leopard monster stared at Yi Chen closely. When it saw Yi Chen summon the God-slayer, its eyes suddenly shrank. Yi Chen's God-slayer in his right hand was already a well-known fact. After all, rumors about Yi Chen had been spread countless times on the World Channel. It was difficult for players not to know. It was because everyone knew that the leopard monster was so afraid. It didn't want to be killed by Yi Chen, and it didn't want to be stabbed to death by Yi Chen's Godslayer. If it was killed by Yi Chen, its realm would drop. If it was stabbed to death by the Godslayer, it would die completely, whether it was in the game world or in the real world. The leopard monster looked at Yi Chen with eyes full of fear. Without thinking, it turned and fled. It wanted to return to the newbie district, but it did not want to experience the power of Yi Chen's Godslayer. Yi Chen glanced at the panther demonic beast that was running away in a hurry, and curled his lips in disdain. For Yi Chen, if he wanted to kill the leopard, he could do it with just a flick of his finger. There was no doubt about this. This was because Yi Chen was in the Nirvana realm. Moreover, he was in the Nirvana realm with his seal removed. Except for the ability to destroy space, Yi Chen could easily use all of his other abilities without any restrictions. However, Yi Chen did not move at all. Killing demonic beasts was a piece of cake for Yi Chen. Even if Yi Chen killed all the demon beasts that invaded the human territory, it wouldn't take much time. However, Yi Chen wouldn't do that because Yi Chen still needed to train his troop. The leopard monster fled frantically. In a breath, it reached the entrance of the valley and stopped. Because it didn't feel Yi Chen's pursuit, nor did it feel Yi Chen's killing intent. After discovering this, the leopard monster was slightly taken aback and couldn't help but turn around to look. When it saw that Yi Chen really stopped in place and didn't chase it at all, it couldn't help but be taken aback. Just when it didn't understand why Yi Chen didn't chase it out, a group of extremely fast demon beasts rushed to the entrance of the valley. The black-haired gorilla at the front saw the leopard monster that stopped at the entrance of the valley and couldn't help but be taken aback, and then shouted, "Idiot, why don't you go back to the demon realm? What are you doing there? Who cares? If it's willing to wait for death here, then let it wait for death. I want to go back." A black-furred wild boar groaned and roared, but before it could finish speaking, it abruptly stopped. In the next second, the black-haired wild boar's angry roar suddenly sounded. "Damn it, why is there a person here? What are you afraid of? Go! Kill him!" A green wolf monster roared fiercely. "Ha ha ha, I didn't expect to eat a person before going back. Don't fight with me, this person is your grandpa who's." After a wild laugh, a huge tiger-like demon beast rushed into the valley. After a breath, the tiger monster came in front of Yi Chen. Without looking, it directly jumped up and then pounced on Yi Chen, who was blocking the entrance of the demon realm's novice area. It opened its mouth and bit. When the leopard monster at the entrance of the valley saw this, a sneer flashed in its eyes. No. He is Yi Chen. The black-haired gorilla looked at Yi Chen in the valley, and suddenly thought of something. The two gorillas' eyes shrank fiercely, and then shouted in surprise. After it asked the leopard monster, it saw Yi Chen in the valley. At that moment it was puzzled. It must be known that in the Great Han Dynasty, there were basically no humans outside the city because of the demon realm. Even if they saw them, they would be in groups. How could there be a single person appearing? When it remembered that the leopard monster stopped at the entrance of the valley and did not enter, it looked at Yi Chen again and then noticed the golden Pegasus that Yi Chen was riding. After that, the black-haired gorilla remembered the rumors of Yi Chen and then confirmed the identity of the young man in the valley. It was the number one person of the human race, Yi Chen. In the valley, the tiger monster that pounced on Yi Chen grew in the wind, and in the blink of an eye, it became a 100-meter giant monster. Then it opened its mouth and wanted to swallow Yi Chen and the Pegasus Little Gold in one gulp. However, the moment it was about to approach Yi Chen, the black-haired gorilla's exclamation reached its ears. The eyes of the tiger-like demonic beast froze. At the same time, it saw the black and thick god-slaying spear in Yi Chen's hand. Leopard F***ck your grandmother! The tiger monster's angry roar suddenly sounded. The tiger monster obviously recognized Yi Chen and confirmed Yi Chen's identity. Although Yi Chen was riding on the Pegasus Little Gold and did not move, the tiger monster did not think that it could hurt Yi Chen at all. An indescribable sadness, unwillingness, and despair instantly appeared in the tiger monster's heart. At this moment, Yi Chen raised the Godslayer in his right hand and then simply and violently stabbed it forward. Poochie! A sound was heard. The Godslayer effortlessly stabbed into the tiger monster's head. In the next second, a bang sound was heard. The huge body of the tiger demonic beast suddenly exploded. The sky was filled with pieces of flesh and blood, mixed with blood-stained white bones and fur fragments. They directly splashed in all directions and instantly dyed the grass in the valley red. The thick smell of blood suddenly spread out in all directions. It really is Yi Chen. When a green wolf monster saw this, its eyes suddenly shrank and then it shouted in horror. Wasn't he outside Luoyang City? How did he get here so quickly? A black-furred wild boar demon beast swallowed a mouthful of saliva with a gulp sound, and then shouted with incomparable fear. Damn, Yi Chen wants to block the door and not let us return to the demon realm. The black-haired gorilla, who was originally terrified because it confirmed Yi Chen's identity, suddenly thought of something and then shouted in shock. What should we do? He's blocking the way, none of us can get through? When a big fat rat heard this, it immediately became anxious and then screamed. Chapter 5:11. After hearing Big Rat's words, the black-furred gorilla couldn't help but glance at Yi Chen, who was still blocking the entrance of the newbie area. After a while, the black-furred gorilla said in a deep voice, "He's alone. Let's wait for them to come and charge together. That way we still have a chance." That's a good idea. No matter how powerful Yi Chen is, he's only one person. When they're all here, we'll charge together. Yi Chen won't be able to stop us. The black-furred wild boar's eyes lit up when it heard this. Who's going to take the lead? The green wolf demonic beast couldn't help but glance at the surrounding demonic beasts when it heard this and asked. The black-furred gorilla snorted coldly and said, "Of course. Of course, the subordinates of the Lord will take the lead. If they die, so be it. It's considered a contribution to the players of the demon race." That's a good idea. If those bastards who have become lords aren't willing, then we'll kill them. The leopard demonic beast, who had been silent all this while, grinned and said. In the valley, in front of the entrance of the newbie area of the demon race, Yi Chen, who was riding on Little Gold, curled his lips in disdain when he heard the conversation of the demonic beasts at the entrance of the valley. The demonic beasts had a good plan and a good idea. Unfortunately, they had overlooked Yi Chen's strength and Yi Chen's ability. Yi Chen wasn't just terrifying because of the Godslayer. Yi Chen also had his primordial spirit, magic power, and the divine night thunder controlling art. He also had the fire spirit pearl, which was a powerful weapon that could kill groups of people. No matter how many demonic beasts there were, they wouldn't be able to use numbers to escape Yi Chen's attack and return to the newbie area of the demon race. What's more, this was the valley, not the wilderness. No matter how many demonic beasts there were, the number of demonic beasts that could enter the valley was fixed. There wouldn't be too many of them. Therefore, Yi Chen wasn't worried about the demonic beasts' plan at all. Time passed slowly. Not long after, a dull rumbling sound came from the ground. Rumble, millions of demonic beasts rushed towards the entrance of the valley. Why aren't you guys going in? The Golden Mane Lion King, who was leading the group of beasts, saw the group of beasts at the entrance of the valley. After being stunned for a moment, it roared. The Golden Lion King did not think that his fellow clansmen would be so kind as to wait for him here, because it knew very well that the demon race did not coexist peacefully. In the newbie district of the demon clan, they also fought and killed each other every day. If not for this invasion of the human clan, they would not have united. And it was able to become the commander of this attack on Luoyang because it was the strongest. At the same time, it was also the strongest overlord among the shifter players. Once it returned to the newbie district of the demon race, at least half of its kind would ignore it. It was for this reason that the Golden Lion King didn't think that the demonic beasts at the entrance of the valley would be so kind as to wait for him. The moment Golden Fur Lion King finished his words, the leopard demonic beast who was the first to arrive at the valley directly shouted, "Your Majesty, Yi Chen is in the valley." The Golden Fur Lion King, who was leading the herd of beasts in a mad dash, narrowed his eyes when he heard this. After that, he stopped without hesitation. The demonic beasts behind it also stopped. Yi Chen is in the valley? The Golden Fur Lion King glanced at the entrance of the valley, then stared at the leopard demonic beast and asked in a deep voice. When the leopard demonic beast heard this, it nodded its head and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." When the Golden Fur Lion King heard this, its two lion eyebrows immediately knitted together. Damn, isn't Yi Chen outside Luoyang City? How did he get here so quickly? A hedgehog demonic beast hurriedly looked at the leopard demonic beast and roared. Yeah, even if Yi Chen is strong, it's impossible for him to reach the valley so quickly. We didn't see Yi Chen along the way. A black python stared at the leopard demonic beast and said gloomily, "If you don't believe me, you can go to the valley and take a look." At the entrance of the valley, the black-haired gorilla snorted coldly. After that, it looked at the Golden Fur Lion King and said, "Your Majesty, Yi Chen is very strong. None of us will be able to gain any advantage. Therefore, I suggest that all the lords send out their demon soldiers and let them take the lead. Only then will we have a chance to return to the demon realm." Your Majesty, I think this suggestion is good. When a white fox demonic beast heard this, it glanced at the black-haired gorilla and then looked at the Golden Fur Lion King and said, "Your Majesty, I think this suggestion is good too." A mongrel demonic beast nodded its head and said, "I think so too, me too." The demonic beasts spoke one after another and reached a consensus. When the Golden Fur Lion King heard the agreement of the demonic beasts, his lion eyebrows immediately knitted together. He was one of the lords of the demon clan, and the most powerful one. More importantly, his subordinates were among the millions of demonic beasts. Moreover, there were more than 2 million of them. Originally, he wanted to bring this group of subordinates back to the demon realm and plunder as many benefits as he could. Then, he would quickly increase his cultivation and ascend to the Eldritch world. But now, all the shifter players here were obviously planning to take advantage of it. He wanted his demon soldiers to create a chance for the players of his clan to safely return to the demon clan's newbie area. Naturally, he was unwilling, but he had to consider the consequences of his refusal. Although he had the absolute advantage here, once he refused, he would definitely be attacked by the players of his clan. This way, his demon soldiers would definitely suffer heavy losses. More importantly, the demonic beasts around him were all players of the demon clan. His subordinates were all at the back. After a moment of silence, the Golden Fur Lion King retracted his anger and said in a deep voice, "Okay. Let's wait for a while. When the lords arrive, we will act together. Otherwise, if there are too few of us, we won't be able to succeed." "My king, you are thinking too much. 2,000,000 is enough. Moreover, now is not the time to delay. If Yi Chen's troops arrive here, we won't be able to escape even if we want to. Don't forget, Yi Chen can summon Vermilion Bird and White Tiger." The black-furred gorilla at the entrance of the valley said without hesitation. When the black-furred demonic beast finished speaking, the demonic beasts' faces changed. Then, they all looked at the Golden Fur Lion King. The Golden Fur Lion King glared at the black-furred gorilla and roared, "Okay!" After the Golden Fur Lion King finished speaking, he turned around and shouted at the millions of demonic beasts behind him, "Charge into the valley and kill Yi Chen." When the Golden Fur Lion King finished speaking, the 2,000,000 demonic beasts that were similar to the natives of the Three Kingdoms beginner area immediately moved and charged into the valley. Rumble! Tens of thousands of demonic beasts galloped and the earth rumbled. The 2,000,000 demonic beasts of the Golden Fur Lion King quickly reached the entrance of the valley and directly entered the valley. They were also demonic beasts and had high intelligence. However, they had to obey the Golden Fur Lion King's orders because the Golden Fur Lion King was their lord. In the valley, in front of the entrance of the Demon Clan's beginner area, Yi Chen, who was riding on the Pegasus Little Gold, looked at the demonic beasts charging into the valley and sneered. In the next second, Yi Chen raised his left hand. A buzzing sound was heard. A gigantic palm that blotted out the sun suddenly appeared in the sky. Chapter 512. Boom! A destructive aura suddenly erupted along with the appearance of the giant palm. The white clouds in the sky instantly dissipated. Outside the valley, the monsters noticed that something was wrong with the sky and subconsciously looked up. In the next second, the monsters outside the valley all widened their eyes. What is that?" A hedgehog looked at the giant palm that suddenly appeared in the sky and shouted in horror. "Spell! It must be Yi Chen using a spell." A black-furred wild boar suddenly thought of something and immediately screamed. What kind of spell is this? This is a divine ability." A giant black snake roared in horror. The demonic beasts spoke one after another. They were all terrified. They couldn't help but be afraid. The palm lines of the giant palm in the sky were clearly visible and carried a boundless destructive aura. That aura frightened them and made them tremble. Destruction and death were the feelings in all the monsters' hearts at this moment. Rumble! Thousands of monsters galloped and the earth rumbled. The 2,000,000 monsters that were rushing towards the valley suddenly stopped. They received the Golden Fur Lion King's order, but the destructive aura of the giant palm in the sky was too strong. It was so strong that their souls began to feel fear. In the valley, Yi Chen glanced at the monsters that stopped and smiled coldly. Then, he slapped the air with his left hand. The giant palm in the sky instantly slapped the ground. Boom! A loud sound was heard and the earth instantly shook violently. In the next second, the strong aftershocks of the earthquake directly spread into the distance. After a breath, the giant palm disappeared and a huge palm print appeared on the ground. The palm print was at least 100 meters deep in the ground. And at the place where the palm print was, there was a blood lake. It was formed by the blood of 2,000,000 monsters. The smell of blood, killing, and death instantly rose from the blood lake. The mountains that were originally on both sides of the valley's entrance had long disappeared. Quiet. Very quiet. The remaining shifter players stared blankly at the huge blood handprint lake in front of them. There were 2,000,000 monsters there, but now they had all turned into meat paste and merged into the blood lake. Gulp, gulp, suddenly, the sound of people swallowing their saliva could be heard. The shifter players looked at the motionless Yi Chen on Xiao Jin's Pegasus and took a few steps back involuntarily. Fear, panic, terror. These were the thoughts running through the shifter race players' mind. Initially, they thought that Yi Chen was only one person, and that he wouldn't be able to fend off the 2,000,000 demonic beasts. Then, they would look for an opportunity to charge into the novice zone and return to the demon world safely. But that was not the case at all. Not only had Yi Chen blocked it with ease, but he had also killed 2,000,000 demonic beasts with a single slap. Of the 2,000,000 demonic beasts, not a single one was able to get close to Yi Chen, and not a single one was able to survive. Your Majesty, what should we do? A white dog demon beast looked at the golden fur lion king with a face full of fear and stuttered. Yi Chen is too scary. A rat demon beast said with a face full of fear. We can't go back. We can't go back. If we want to go back, we can only die. A black bear sat on the ground with a bang and said with a face full of despair. The monsters were all terrified as they spoke and asked, but the golden fur lion king did not respond at all. At this moment, the golden fur lion king's heart was filled with fear. He knew that Yi Chen was very strong, and he also knew that there was no one in the demon realm who could fight against Yi Chen. But he never thought that Yi Chen would be so strong that he could kill 2,000,000 demonic beasts with a wave of his hand. Moreover, it was effortless and effortless. Such a Yi Chen was not someone they could deal with. Even if they used more demonic beasts to rush into the demon clan's novice zone, it would be useless. They did not have a chance. Not a chance at all. This was because they couldn't even get close to Yi Chen, let alone rush into the demon clan's novice zone. My king, we have lost. If you want to preserve the strength of the demon clan, it's best to talk to Yi Chen. The white fox tried her best to calm her violently beating heart, then looked at the golden fur lion king and said. When the golden fur lion king heard this, his originally dazed lion eyes regained some life. In the next second, the golden fur lion king looked at the white fox and said, You are the smartest one in the demon clan. Go and talk to Yi Chen. As long as he is willing to let us go, we will agree to any request he has. Before the white fox could answer, the other demon clan players all looked over. White fox, go and talk to him. If you can come to an agreement, then you will be our king. A green wolf demon beast stared at the white fox and said in a deep voice. That's right. As long as you can persuade Yi Chen to leave, we will all worship you as our king. The black fur gorilla nodded heavily and said. Go quickly. The future of the demon clan is in your hands. A huge snake stuck out its tongue and said. The white fox demon beast glanced at the surrounding demon beasts, and its eyes flashed with a cold light. In the next second, the white fox said coldly, No need. When the surrounding demon clan players heard this, their expressions all changed. Just as the demon clan players wanted to tear the white fox apart, the white fox suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a blood-red bead. The moment the blood-red bead appeared, it exploded with a boom. In the next second, a demonic blood-red light appeared and enveloped the white fox. In the valley, Yi Chen, who was riding the Pegasus Little Gold, saw the white fox's body suddenly emit a red light, and his eyes widened. Heavenly Demon Blood Escape Technique. This white fox was actually Demon King Qi Shan originally. Yi Chen couldn't recognize the demon clan players' identities. After all, they were all beasts and didn't use any special treasures. As for the white fox, at first glance, he couldn't tell anything different. To be precise, it was no different from an ordinary fox. However, when it spat out the blood-red bead and was enveloped by the blood-red light, it couldn't escape Yi Chen's judgment. After all, Yi Chen had seen the blood-red bead with his own eyes in his previous life after his rebirth. He also knew that among the demon clan, the one who obtained the blood-red bead was a fox who later became Demon King Qishan. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't have been able to recognize the white fox at first glance. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that the blood-red bead was not only useful to the demon clan, but it was also useful to humans. This was because it was the Sky Phase blood essence, and it came from the primordial world. The demon clan could use it to increase their strength and use the Sky Fae blood escape technique. And if humans obtained the Sky Phase blood essence, they could use it to cultivate their Dharma characteristics. To be precise, if the Sky Phase blood essence belonged to the Kuan Pung, then after humans obtained and refined it, they could transform into the Kuan Pung and obtain all its abilities. Chapter 513. Of course, the power of a Dharma characteristic divine power was only at the level of a heavenly demon. Because it was the blood essence of a heavenly demon, not the blood essence of a divine beast or a connate demon god. For Yi Chen, the power of a Dharma characteristic divine power was not important. After all, that was the blood essence of a heavenly demon. At most, it could unleash the power of a heavenly demon. Yi Chen, on the other hand, had the 9 revolutions mysterious art and the divine night lightning wielding art. What's more, he had a connate cardinal treasure and a connate spirit treasure that everyone coveted. These were not inferior to a Dharma characteristic divine power. However, a Dharma characteristic divine power had a characteristic. Once used, one would definitely become a demon. Of course, the so-called demon was only the appearance, and it was the transformation of the primordial spirit. The original body was still a human, and it was difficult for the demon to discover any flaws. And this was what Yi Chen valued. As for the reason, it was very simple. The untainted world was the world of the demon and the sorcerer tribe. After Yi Chen ascended to the untainted world, even if his strength improved rapidly, he would be easily crushed by the demon experts before reaching a certain level. Many of the treasures that Yi Chen knew of were in the demon race's territory. Therefore, Yi Chen wanted to obtain the blood essence of a heavenly demon and refine it to obtain a Dharma characteristic divine power. In this way, Yi Chen could obtain the appearance of a demon and then run directly to the demon territory to plunder the treasures without any scruples. Moreover, he did not have to worry about being discovered by the demon as a human. Otherwise, Yi Chen could only plunder the treasures bit by bit, plundering heavenly materials and earthly treasures. One had to know that the demon race and the human race were mortal enemies. If Yi Chen was plundering treasures and was seen or bumped into by the demon race, then there would only be one result. Yi Chen would be attacked by the demon race. If the demon clans besieging Yi Chen did not have existences that were far stronger than Yi Chen, then Yi Chen was not too worried. But if there were existences that were far stronger than Yi Chen, then Yi Chen could only escape. Even if he had the Godslayer, the connate cardinal treasure, it would be useless. It was like a kid who had a nuclear bomb but couldn't launch it, fighting with a commander who could launch countless missiles. He had been blasted into smithereens by a missile before he even made a move. However, things were different now that he was a member of the Yao clan. If he encountered any treasures, he could just take them. If any Yao clan tried to stop him, he could just kill them and rob them. He didn't have to worry about being surrounded or even attracting the attention of Yao clan experts. Thinking of this, Yi Chen squeezed the horse's belly with his legs. The Pegasus Xiao Jin instantly understood and moved forward. A second later, Yi Chen disappeared. At the entrance of the valley, the white fox demonic beast that was enveloped by the blood-red light flashed and then rushed into the distance. The surrounding demonic beasts widened their eyes. They never thought that the white fox demonic beast would have such an ability. How is that possible? How can a white fox know demonic arts? The black-furred wild boar roared in shock after coming back to its senses. Damn it, it can't know demonic arts unless it evolves into a demon. The black-furred gorilla stared at the blood-red light that was rushing into the distance, and then said in a deep voice. The golden lion king glanced at the blood-red light that was flying into the distance, then jumped and rushed into the valley. Yi Chen is gone. An incomparably surprised shout suddenly rang out from the mouth of a rat demonic beast. A second later, the demonic beasts rushed toward the entrance of the Yao clan's newbie area in the valley without hesitation. In the sky, the space before the blood-red light that was rushing into the distance was suddenly distorted. Yi Chen, who was riding on the Pegasus Shao Jin, suddenly appeared and stabbed with his spear. Puff! The blood-red light instantly stopped and then disappeared. The white fox demonic beast that had its neck pierced by the Godslayer appeared in the sky. It looked at Yi Chen with eyes full of disbelief, then screamed, "Brother Yi! How is that possible? How is that possible?" The white fox demonic beast knew that Yi Chen was very strong and knew that Yi Chen could fly, but it did not think that Yi Chen could catch up with the heavenly demonic blood escape technique. But the result was the opposite. Not only did Yi Chen catch up with it, but he also blocked its escape route and stabbed its neck with his spear. Originally, it wanted to escape far away and then eat some people far away from Yi Chen to quickly increase its strength. This way, it could quickly ascend to the primordial world without worrying about losing a realm. But the cruel reality told it that it was useless to think too highly of it. Now, not only did it lose a realm, but it was also stabbed by the Godslayer. Just as the white fox demonic beast's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief, the Godslayer flashed and directly devoured the white fox demonic beast's soul. The next second there was a bang sound. The white fox demonic beast's body instantly exploded into a bloody mist. At this moment, 98 blood-red beads suddenly appeared in the bloody mist. When Yi Chen saw this, the corner of his mouth curled. Then, he used his left hand to grab 8 of the blood-red bead. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining Chaos Fiend 8 Blood Essence X1. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining Heavenly Demonic Thunder Qilin Blood Essence X97. The moment the system notification ended, Yi Chen's eyes widened. Holy shit! There was even a Khanate Godfiend, the Chaos Fiend Ape Blood Essence. Yi Chen knew that the White Fox Demonic Beast, or the future Demon King Qishan, had a lot of blood essence, and it was Heavenly Demonic Blood Essence. But what Yi Chen did not expect was that the future Demon King Qishan not only had Heavenly Demonic Blood Essence, but also a drop of Chaos Fiend Ape Blood Essence. How could Yi Chen not know what kind of existence the Chaos Fiend Ape was? It was one of the Khanate Godfiends, an existence from the same era as Pangu. Of course, in the end, the Chaos Fiend Ape was destroyed by Panga's axe, but its identity as a Khanate Godfiend was real. And now Yi Chen had obtained the Chaos Fiend Ape Blood Essence. Once he refined it, Yi Chen would be able to obtain the Dharma Idol ability, the Chaos Fiend Ape, and then use all the abilities of the Chaos Fiend Ape. Its power was not something that the heavenly demonic Dharma Idol could compare to, and this would be of great help to Yi Chen before he rose to power. Of course, the Dharma Idol ability and the power of the Chaos Fiend Ape were also linked to Yi Chen's strength. If Yi Chen's strength was not strong, he would not be able to unleash such a strong power. Of course, even if he could not unleash such a strong power, Yi Chen would still receive a boost of more than 10 times. And this was the main reason why Yi Chen was so shocked and overjoyed. Not bad, not bad. With the Chaos Fiend Ape Blood Essence, it would be easier to establish a foothold in the Eldritch world after he ascended. Thinking of this, Yi Chen could not help but smirk. Then, he threw the blood essence into his storage space. In the next second, Yi Chen squeezed the horse's belly with his legs, and the Pegasus Shao Jin immediately moved forward and disappeared into the sky. In the valley, at the entrance of the Goblin clan's newbie area. Rumble! The Goblin clan players, who had grown in size, rushed madly towards the entrance of the Goblin clan's newbie area. As Yi Chen was no longer there, they could safely return to the newbie area. Their eyes were filled with excitement. As long as they returned to the newbie area, they would be safe. They would not have to worry about losing a level, and they would not have to worry about being killed by Yi Chen. Chapter 5:14. We're here, we're here. We'll be able to return to the Shifter's realm soon. The Golden Lion King, who was running the fastest, looked at the entrance of the Shifter's Race's beginners area. His eyes were filled with excitement. However, at this moment, the space in front of the entrance of the Shifter's Race's beginners area began to distort. In the next second, a thick, black spear suddenly pierced out. The Golden Lion King, who was in the midst of his excitement, saw the spear and his fur stood on end. Boundless fear suddenly appeared in his heart. It's that spear. Just as the Golden Lion King's thought appeared, the thick, black Godslayer instantly pierced his head. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The Golden Mane Lion King's body instantly exploded into pieces, and then splashed everywhere. At the same time, Yi Chen, who was riding on the Pegasus Little Gold, walked out of the distorted space. The Shifter's Race players, who were stunned by the death of the Golden Lion King, were all stunned when they saw Yi Chen suddenly appear in front of the Shifter's Race's beginners area. Then, they all stopped in unison. He can teleport. A colorful snake suddenly thought of something and screamed. As soon as the colorful snake's words fell, the Shifter's Race players all shuddered at the same time. Yi Chen, who could teleport, and Yi Chen, who couldn't teleport, were two completely different concepts. If Yi Chen couldn't teleport, they still had a chance to escape. However, if Yi Chen could teleport, then even if they ran to the ends of the earth, it would be useless. Yi Chen would still catch up to them. At this moment, the Shifter's Race players who rushed to the valley finally understood why Yi Chen could suddenly appear in the valley without being discovered by them. However, this was no longer important. What was important was that Yi Chen, who could teleport, blocked the entrance of the Shifter's Race's beginners area. Even if they tried their best, they wouldn't be able to successfully return to the Shifter's realm. As for the reason, it was very simple. Yi Chen's strength was just too terrifying. The image of the 2,000,000 demonic beasts being slapped to death with a casual slap was still imprinted in their minds. How could they not be afraid? A black-furred gorilla struggled for a moment before slowly walking in front of the Shifter players. Yi Chen glanced at the black-furred gorilla indifferently and no longer paid any attention to it. To Yi Chen, killing these Yao beasts or players was a piece of cake. However, Yi Chen would not do so for the time being. Because Yi Chen still wanted to use them to scare the army of demon beasts that were about to rush out of the valley. After all, Yi Chen's goal was to train the soldiers. Whether it was the Shifter players or the Shifter soldiers under them, they could provide Samsara City's soldiers with EXP. Yi Chen wouldn't gain much experience from killing them. Therefore, Yi Chen wouldn't casually kill these Shifter players unless they had a death wish. The black-furred gorilla stood in front of the group of Shifter players and tried his best to calm his rapidly beating heart. He then looked at Yi Chen and said, "I'm sorry. I'm willing to use a treasure in exchange for my life. I swear that as long as I return to the Shifter realm and return to the real world, I won't attack the human race for no reason." When Yi Chen heard this, he looked at the black-furred gorilla in surprise and asked, "What treasure?" If it could be called a treasure, it definitely wouldn't be something simple. Moreover, Yi Chen didn't think that the black-furred gorilla would dare to use some trash as a treasure. When the black-furred gorilla heard this, his eyes lit up and he hurriedly said, "It's a bead. Once it enters the water, it can break through the water. If it dives underwater, it can automatically form a protective shield. Inside, you can breathe freely without worrying about drowning. If you go to the sea, even if you dive to the bottom of the sea, you won't have to worry about being crushed to death." "That's it?" Hearing this, Yi Chen laughed coldly and asked, The bead that the black-furred gorilla mentioned was actually a water-repelling bead. It was indeed a treasure. For Yi Chun now it was not very useful. However, after Yi Chun ascended to the untainted land, the water-repelling bead would be useful. This was because most of the places with treasures of heaven and earth in the untainted land were very dangerous. For example, in the Xian Yin River, which could corrode the body of a golden immortal, there was 9 souls grass, which could strengthen the divine soul. If Yi Chen didn't have the water-repelling bead, he naturally wouldn't dare to go into the river. However, with the water-repelling bead, Yi Chen could completely ignore the water of the Xian Yin River and directly go into the river to search for 9 souls grass. When the black-furred gorilla heard Yi Chen's extremely cold question, he suddenly shivered and hurriedly asked, "This is a rare treasure. This is a rare treasure. Could it be that this is not enough? Do you think I need the water-repelling bead to go into the sea?" Yi Chen curled his lips disdainfully and asked. When the black-furred gorilla heard this, his black face suddenly froze. If Yi Chen said that he didn't need the water-repelling bead to go into the sea, it meant that the treasure that he was talking about couldn't move Yi Chen at all. In that case, how could he return to the newbie zone of the demon clan unscathed? In fact, the black-furred gorilla was wrong from the beginning. No matter what treasure he was talking about, Yi Chen wouldn't agree to trade with him. This was because Yi Chen had never thought of letting the members of the demon clan leave the newbie zone of the 3 kingdoms. The reason why Yi Chen asked was because he wanted to know the type of treasure before deciding whether to make a move. One had to know that there were no restrictions on high-grade treasures. For example, Yi Chen's Godslayer had no restrictions. Not only could it be used in the game world, but it could also be used in the real world. If the treasure that the black-furred gorilla mentioned was of a very high grade and very practical, Yi Chen would not hesitate to make a move. This had nothing to do with whether he was despicable or not. The demon clan was the mortal enemy of the humans. If Yi Chen wasn't strong enough, Yi Chen would definitely be the one being slaughtered today. It was also because of this reason that Yi Chen never thought of agreeing to the black-furred gorilla's request. Just as the black-furred gorilla was worried and didn't know how to continue speaking, a loud and dull rumbling sound was heard. Rumble, rumble, tens of millions of monsters were rushing toward the valley. When the demon clan players in the valley heard the loud rumbling sound, their eyes were filled with fear. They didn't have any confidence because of the arrival of tens of millions of their own kind. Not only did they not have any confidence, but they also became more and more afraid. As for the reason, it was very simple. They were in the valley now. If their own kind rushed into the valley, there would only be one outcome. Yi Chen would make a move again and kill all the monsters that entered the valley. If that happened, they would definitely die in the valley. Rumble, the rumbling sound was getting louder and closer. The demon clan players in the valley looked at each other. Without thinking, they rushed out of the valley. They didn't dare to move earlier because they were worried that they would be killed by Yi Chen if they moved. However, they dared to move now because they didn't want to stay in the valley and wait for death. This was because if their own kind rushed into the valley, Yi Chen would definitely make a move. Just as the shifter race players were charging out of the valley, the god-slaying spear in Yi Chen's right hand casually stabbed forward. The tip of the god-slayer disappeared instantly. Then, the entire spear disappeared without a trace. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.